The gray keep of Winterfell breathed beneath a thin exhalation of dawn mist, the first early spring light spilling across ramparts that seemed older than the memory of stone itself. Crows shuffled atop the broken merlons of the collapsed east wall, their silhouettes stark against a sky bruised lavender and pearl. In the godswood, sap thawed from months of frozen slumber, pushing through veins of ancient heart tree and elm alike, so that the air smelled faintly of green life reborn, laced with resin and something older, an iron tang of blood, unforgotten. Sansa Stark stood just beyond the footbridge that arched over the hot water of the moat, hands tucked into a cloak the shade of pale smoke. She watched steam coil from the surface below, watched it drift and vanish, like the ghosts of too many winters. Inside her chest an ache as familiar as her own bones pulsed. The ache of home, of duty, of secrets she had never dared voice aloud. A soft crunch of gravel announced Maester Wolkan drawing up beside her, robes rustling. "My lady, the ravens are restless this morning. They feel the shift in the weather, or perhaps something else entirely." "Mending." Sansa did not answer at once. She followed a thread of steam with her eyes until it dispersed into empty air. "They sense 1,000 things we cannot," she said, voice barely louder than the moat's quiet lapping. "Let them mutter. I will listen when the time comes." The maester inclined his bald head. "The lords assemble in the great hall within the hour as you requested." Lord Manderley's column arrived in the night, and Lady Barbary Dustin with him. "They will expect words." "Words I have," Sansa replied. "Whether they will like them is another matter." Wolkan hesitated. "And a king?" She felt the word inside her like a dropped stone. King. It no longer meant the dead boy of golden hair who had once owned her hand in faraway King's Landing, nor the night-cold memory of a northern king crowned beneath snow-laden pine. This king wore black still, but his cloak was shorn of Night's Watch sigil. John.I. The name was a heartbeat, an axe blow, a prayer. Sansa pulled her cloak tighter, as though that single syllable could slice the chill from her flesh. "John is on the road from Castle Serwyn," she said. "If the gods are kind, he will ride through the gate before the lords lose patience. Tell the kitchens to ready food and mulled wine thick with honey, and find someone to mend that banner over the dais. If we are to host a king, let the dire wolf fly true." The maester bowed himself away. Sansa remained, listening to the godswood sigh. The thought of Jon's return filled her with a strange alloy of anticipation and dread. They had not spoken beyond courier quill scratches for a slab of months, each line of his elegant but uneven hand bearing the weight of 1,000 hungry folk scattered across ruined holdfasts, of iron-born raiders slinking up the white knife, of looming southern crowns that still believed the North ought kneel. He wrote always of needs. Grain, coin, keeps repaired, and never of himself. She, in turn, answered with inventories, advice and silences between the words where questions ought to be. "What do you feel, Jon? What do you dream, alone in those drafty halls where our ancestors weep?" Yet she had not asked, and he had not offered. The moat burbled. A raven barked harshly in the rookery tower. Somewhere a blacksmith's hammer rang its first brave strike of the day. Sansa inhaled, straightened, and walked back across the bridge. Duty first, always. The ache could wait. By mid-morning, the great hall thrummed like the inside of a forge, heat rolling from twin hearths, banked high and crowded benches groaning beneath furs. Lords with weather-spotted faces and ladies wrapped in wolf-pelt shawls raised wooden cups of spiced wine to chilled lips, while servants wove through the crush with trays of brown bread and smoked trout. Above them, the old stone arches caught flames in their scars, glowing a dull red that painted each gathered noble in colors of embers and sin. Lady Barbary Dustin sat rigid near the front, pale hair bound in a net of jet beads, one gloved hand stroking the mastiff at her feet. Lord Wyman Manderley occupied a carved oaken chair, meant for 3 slighter men, cheeks flushed from a private flask of pepper wine he favored over any Stark hospitality. Alongside them perched Lyanna Mormont, so small her boots dangled, green eyes fierce beneath a shock of dark curls. The Mormont girl watched everything. Sansa suspected the child saw more than half the grown men combined. A hush rippled from the doors. Sansa felt, rather than saw, the figure step across the threshold, the way the air altered when winter enters a room. Jon Snow, though the hall now named him Stark in defiance of father's sins, strode beneath the antlers of the old broken stag head, his cloak sodden with meltwater, black curls damp against his forehead. Two dire wolves paced close, ghost-limbed in mute white menace, and the shadow-pelted Nymeria who had ghosted south with Arya before returning to haunt the Wolfswood with a pack of feral kin. Nymeria's hulking presence at Jon's heel was new enough to draw murmurs, but even she seemed subdued by the press of humanity, yellow eyes sweeping like lanterns. Jon's own eyes, gray as a northern sea, settled on Sansa where she stood upon the dais. Something flickered there. Relief, perhaps, or guilt. She lifted her chin. A gentle nod passed between them. Small as a coin exchanging hands, weighted with private currency. "My lords, my ladies." Jon's voice filled the stones, rough as iced peat, and just as steady. "You've ridden far and braved broken roads to heed the call of Winterfell. I thank you." He unpinned his damp cloak, tossed it to a waiting page, and mounted the dais at Sansa's side. Manderly pushed to his feet, tunic buttons straining. "Your Grace," he boomed, bowing from the waist. "White Harbor stands with the king in the north." A smattering of assent rose, some hearty, some reluctant. Barbary Dustin's mouth curled in something between humor and contempt. When at last the clamor faded, Sansa stepped forward. "We stand at a crossroad." She began, projecting so chandlery men at the back might hear. "The Night King lies ashes on the wind, yet winter has not yielded all its teeth. Crops rot in untended fields. Small folk huddle in cellars without roof or road. Our bannermen bleed coin fending off skirmishes from Ironborn who taste northern weakness like sharks taste blood. The South will not forget us, nor forgive our choosing of our own king. Now." Lady Barbary's voice rang brittle. "Let them choke on their pardons. Wolves do not slink for lions. And yet, wolves may starve," Sansa countered smoothly. "To guard our people we must do more than snarl. We must forge strength no storm can split." She paused, gaze traveling each tight-drawn face. "There is a path, one that binds holdfast to holdfast beneath a single banner as unyielding as frozen iron." "Men know." A rustle of interest. Jon's brow nodded, but he kept silence. Sansa inhaled. The next words tasted like frost on her tongue. "The North needs more than a king. It needs an empire of ice and iron, Northmen united with free folk, with riverlords who still keep faith with our wolves, with manderly fleets upon the shivering sea. To weave that tapestry requires more than oaths. It requires blood." Lord Glover barked a laugh. "Blood we have plenty since the war. Speak plain, Lady Stark." "Then?" She did not flinch. "Then I will. House Stark must stitch its own branches into one trunk. I propose a marriage. King Jon of the North shall wed Sansa Stark of Winterfell." The hall fell into a vacuum. Barbary's mastiff growled. Lyanna Mormont's eyes flared wider and brighter, like sparks struck from flint. Even Ghost's ears pricked. Jon turned to her slowly. "Sansa," he said, but the word held worlds. Inquiry. Surprise. A note almost pleading, as though she had flung him upon a stage unawares. She lifted a hand, forestalling comment. "We share Stark blood, but not as brother and sister. By the laws of men and the blessings of the old gods, marriage is permissible. It seals Torhen's line to Ned's, ends whispers of bastardy, and signals to every queasy holdfast that House Stark stands indivisible. Our enemies prey on fissures. Let them find none." Lord Glover glanced at Manderly, who rubbed his chin, thoughtful. Barbary Dustin leaned forward, eyes alight with something that might be intrigue. Jon's jaw worked. "You would bind yourself to me for politics." Sansa met his gaze straight on. "I would bind myself to protect the North. Our people have lost too much to gamblers' chances." Her voice dropped so only he might hear. "And perhaps politics is the language they trust. The feelings behind it are ours to know. A hush stretched thin as winter ice. Then Manderley cleared his throat, jowls quivering. "There is wisdom in the lady's words," he said. "The South looks upon us and sees war-weary cubs. An iron-spined house, Stark may give pause." Glover grunted. "So might 2,000 fresh spears, but those take time we lack." Lyanna Mormont rose on her bench, tiny fists planted on the table. "The Lady of Winterfell is no fool. If she and King Jon wed, bears will roar in approval. Who better to rule than two wolves who have survived every storm?" Murmurs escalated. Yet not all faces softened. A lean man in a patched fox fur jerkin, Lord Serwyn, stood. And should their union fail to quicken heirs? A marriage binds today, but the morrow cares for succession. Sansa felt heat in her cheeks that had nothing to do with hearth glow. "Heirs will come," she said, firm but not sharp. "Winterfell has known barren snows before, and still spring follows." She felt rather than saw Joan's faint blush. He clasped his hands behind his back. "Enough," he said quietly, yet the hall obeyed. "I was born with the stain of bastardy. Many who swore me king did so out of need, not love. If my marriage can nail House Stark into a single beam that will not splinter, I will bear any whisper, but I'll not compel the Lady Sansa to pay my debts." Barbary Dustin's laughter crackled. "The debts of men are paid by women more often than not, your grace." Sansa ignored her. She took one step closer to Jon. "I choose this," she said for all to hear. "As I once had choices taken from me, now I seize one. Not for gowns or songs or chivalry. For Winterfell." She paused, voice softening. "And for you, Jon. I have trusted you with my life more than once. I would trust you with marriage." Against flickering torchlight, she saw his resolve melt, reform. Melt again like steel reheated at the forge. His nod was a slow forging of its own. "Very well. Let the gods witness." Menotal. In the rafters, a raven croaked twice, and coins of silence rang onward. Somewhere beyond stone walls the wind shifted, carrying the scent of thawed earth and unseen blossoms poised to pierce snow. It smelled like uncertainty. It smelled like beginnings. Yet beginnings are seldom gentle. Within hours of the proclamation, letters flew by raven toward every crannog, every watchtower perched above starved fields. Sansa penned them herself in the solar where sunlight carved slanted gilt across the desk. As quill scratched parchment, she felt the weight of each word anchor itself inside her ribs. Loyal subjects. Empire of the North. Any who would contest the sanctity of the Union may bring voice at midsummer moot beneath Winterfell's weirwood. Until such time peace is commanded. She sanded the ink, sealed with direwolf wax, and set the tubes into carved bone cylinders. Sweet-voiced young Beth, one of the newer maids, ferried each to Wolken's rookery. By the 10th letter, Sansa's hand cramped. She flexed fingers, gazed out the narrow window slit to the training yard below. Jon moved there like shadow and substance. He sparred with Alys Karstark, steel flashing, direwolf cloak discarded on the mud. Ace drove hard, light on feet. But Jon met every blow true, turning each aside with a ringing slide. Ghost lounged at yard's edge, massive head upon paws, crimson eyes tracking each movement as though cataloging threat. When Jon at last disarmed Alys with a deft twist, he touched her shoulder in apology before offering his own blade for another pass. The gesture, so like him to grant dignity to defeat, stirred a tenderness in Sansa so swift she had to grip the desk edge. Politics, she reminded herself, turning away. Only politics. Afternoon bled toward dusk. Lords dispersed to chambers. Fires were banked. And still, she had not spoken alone with Jon. Not properly. She had left him to his swordplay, and he had left her to parchment, each orbiting the other with cautious courtesy, like hawks circling the same updraft. Soon courtesy would not suffice. A wedding loomed, unstoppable as tide. She descended spiral stairs, footsteps echoing. At the bottom, She nearly collided with Lyanna Mormont. The bear girl regarded Sansa with shrewd appraisal. "Do you think this will hold?" Lyanna asked, without preamble. Sansa folded arms. "Do you doubt it?" "I doubt everything," Lyanna said. "That is why my people yet live. The world delights in crushing the unwary." She tilted her head. "But I believe you mean to see this through. And he? He would stand on burning coals if you asked him, I think." Heat crawled up Sansa's neck. "You mistake duty for desire, Lady Lyanna." "Perhaps." A thin smile. "Duty begets desire often enough. And desire, well, it births empires or breaks them." The child gave a perfunctory curtsy. "Good night, Lady Stark." Sansa remained in the dim corridor after Lyanna's light steps faded. She breathed once, twice, then made for the godswood. Snow still limned the roots of the heart tree, though grass peered in stubborn jets. The moon lay half-born over sagging branches, silvering each patch of meltwater. Sansa knelt before the weirwood. Red leaves rustled like paper burning slow. She pressed her palm to the trunk's vein-streaked bark. "Father," she whispered. "Mother. Bran. Shine. Arya. I know not if these words cross the distances to you, whether leagues or deeper mysteries. I have chosen a path whose end I cannot see. If this is folly, grant me courage to endure its cost. If wisdom, grant me patience to serve it well." "Da." The leaves sighed. Footfalls carried across moss behind her. She knew them by their measured cadence before Ghost's breath ghosted white into her peripheral vision. "Sansa," Jon said. She stood, brushing pine needles from her knees. Candlelight from the keep did not reach here. Only moonlight played on his face, turning scar on cheek to ghost-pale line. "I feared you would not come," she said. "I feared you needed solitude." He paused. "But I need to speak with you, and the walls have ears thicker than the bark here." She nodded, stepping aside to make room though none was needed. He looked up at the face carved into the tree, its bleeding eyes and silent mouth. "I was a bastard," Jon began. "For years my dreams were filled with snow. White walls, white silence. Bastards build no legacies, they told me." He exhaled. "Then the battle beneath that sky of dragonfire and dead men gave me a crown I never sought. Now you hand me a path to more than a crown. An empire." He turned toward her. "Why me?" "Because they already chose you once," Sansa answered. "Because they believe you would burn before you bent the knee to southern whims. And because I trust you not to waste what power you gain." She managed a faint smile. "Besides, I could hardly marry Lord Manderley." A flicker of amusement softened his eyes. Then it fled. "What of us? Are we strangers wearing stark faces to fool the realm?" Sansa studied him. The moon caught silver in his hair. "Do you remember the night before the Battle of the Bastards? You came to my tent, thinking me asleep. You placed your cloak over me. I was not asleep, Jon. I lay there shivering from fear, and its warmth reminded me of a time we were children, running through corridors when father pretended not to see." Her hands twined. "I have thought of that cloak many nights since. It felt like home." His voice was a rasp. "And now?" "Now I would wear it in truth," she said quietly. He stepped closer, the breath between them fogging into one ghost cloud. Ghost huffed behind, restless but calm. "If we do this, Sansa, it must be whole. Not for lords, not for banners. For us. Otherwise the empire you dream will crack when wind blows." She swallowed. "Whole, then." His hand, scarred and calloused, rose to brush a copper curl from her brow. The touch was tentative, reverent, and something within her, some tightly wound knot, loosened. She leaned into his palm, closing eyes. The godswood hummed. The heart tree watched. When they parted, there were no vows exchanged, no ringing horns, yet the space between them felt altered, as though a bannerman had bent knee and sworn fealty. Neither named it. They simply turned together toward the distant glow of Winterfell's windows, where servants would begin threading beeswax candles in sills for the long night. 3 days later, ravens returned with answers. Some bore cautious approval, others fervent joy. Still others veiled protest. House Bolton's last ragged cadet branch screeched dissent, but none heeded that flayed man any longer. The Riverland spoke with mixed tongues. Lady Brienne, writing from River Run where she advised her lord husband Sir Podrick Payne in matters martial, offered blessing couched in pragmatic counsel. From beyond the wall came tattered parchment daubed in charcoal runes. Tormund Giantsbane, never one for letters, affirmed that free folk would follow Little Crow with snow hair and Lady with fire eyes if bread and steel were shared fair. Sansa smiled at that. Yet not all tidings warmed hearts. In the Solar Jon read aloud the response branded with the crowned stag seal of Storm's End. King Gendry Baratheon extends congratulations on your forthcoming nuptials, Jon quoted, and invites discussions on boundaries of influence, lest the North's empire threaten the sovereignty of other free kingdoms. He set the parchment down, meaning he smells risk. He will not march north over such risk, Sansa said, not with the Reach still unquiet and Iron Throne claimants sprouting like weeds. Jon nodded, but concern carved lines at his mouth. Power vacuums invite ambition. The South may yet find a singular banner to rally behind, and then they'll glance north again. Better to be ready. Which is why we must begin forging alliances beyond old fealties. Sansa agreed. Not merely agreements of trade, but bonds woven bone deep. Jon glanced at her sidelong. Marriage will be the first thread. She felt the flutter of nerves, but held his gaze. Then let us weave it firm. Preparations unfurled like scrolls across Winterfell. Looms clacked in the low keep, where women spun direwolf sigils onto silver cloth. Seamstresses dyeing silk in vats of snow melt, laced with crushed juniper to heighten sheen. In the courtyard blacksmiths hammered rings of new chainmail for honor guard. Sparks danced like fireflies while boys pumped bellows. The godswood was swept, each fallen branch cleared, the cavernous hollow beneath the heart tree lit with torches, so that flame and leaf blood reflected upon the still pool beyond. Sansa oversaw with measured calm, but sleepless nights gnawed. In chambers appointed to her since childhood, she paced before the hearth, mind sifting through each potential fault line. Bannermen jealous of Manderley port wealth, free folk bristling at empire talk, Tully cousins wary of Stark ascendancy. A misstep could unravel more than her marriage bed. She turned at last to the trunk at foot of her bed and withdrew a roll of parchment stitched with Blackfish's old maps of Riverland's wading paths. Useless now, yet memory of Brynden Tully's patient lessons steadied her pulse. Strategy is water, Nace. It flows around hard corners. Remember that. So she flowed. She wrote to Mira Reed at Grey Water, inviting her to Winterfell as honored envoy. She drafted grain for timber accords with White Harbor that promised shipwright expansions employing orphaned northern youths. She even penned a cautious invitation to Daenerys Stormborn, last Targaryen across the narrow sea. Though rumor claimed the Dragon Queen licked wounds far from politics after her failed siege of King's Landing. Whether dragon or shadow answered, closure of that uncertain flank mattered. Jon balanced her quills with steel. He drilled garrisons, studied supply tallies, walked walls by torch with Sir Davos. Now hand in all but name, whispering of harbor fortifications down coast, where krakens might swim. On nights, they found rare hours alone. They shared bowls of hot stew by heart tree roots, or sat upon the battlements above snowfall, silence companionable as furs on their shoulders. Words grew bolder, moments where Jon would touch her braid, when Sansa would rest her head on his shoulder, when laughter slipped free unguarded. But the wedding waited like snowfall poised on a branch, one tremor, and it might avalanche delight or disaster. On the eve of new moon, the first threat bared its claws. A horn brayed from atop the broken east wall. Riders approached. Jon and the castle guard strode to meet them at gatehouse. Sansa watched from parapet. 5 riders cloaked in soot-black halted before the portcullis. Their leader tossed back hood. Asha Greyjoy, now styling herself Yara. Face lean, hair wind-whipped. Behind her flew a tattered kraken banner, and beside her a maester held aloft a sealed case. Jon descended to parley upon the frost-rimed drawbridge. Sansa could not hear the words exchanged, but she saw Yara's sardonic grin. Joan's rigid shoulders. At length, the maester presented the case. Ghost growled. Later, in the solar, the item lay between them. A single iron warhorn, mouthpiece gilded, kraken tentacles entwining its curve. Yara's message carved on a slate slab, courtesy visit. Rumors reach even Pike. Wolves, forging empires. Empires, hunger. Remember, sea feeds the north. Cross us, and we salt your fields. Accept our trade compact instead. Grain for fish, iron for lumber. And the kraken swims beside the wolf. Mending. Jon tossed the slate onto a pile of scrolls. Threat wrapped in bargain. An expected gambit, Sansa mused. We need their longships if southern fleets test our coasts, but yield too much, and we empower reavers who raid our own villages. She paced. We'll counter with terms. Yearly tribute of timber cut from crown lands, no more than they've pillaged already, but delivered under Stark banners. In return, Yara must station 6 ships as coast guard under our command throughout harvest tides. It steals her freedom to raid us and binds her fortune to ours. Bender Windshall. Jon studied her, a half-smile easing his brow. You've turned Winterfell into your Savas board. She met his smile. Better move than wait. His gaze lingered. I learn each day how much wiser my sister is than I ever knew. She felt her cheeks warm. Yet, she did not shy away. Then learn well. Husband-to-be. The word rippled between them like a stone cast in still pond. Husband. It tasted strange, thrilling. Jon reached across the table, fingers snagging hers. A calloused thumb drew idle circles upon her knuckles. She let her breath slow. I desired neither crown nor empire, he murmured. But with you, perhaps desire finds me. Before she could respond, a knock rattled. Sir Davos entered, one eyebrow apologetic. Forgive your graces. A rider from Deepwood Mott. Urgent. Jon released her hand, shoulders straightening. Duty-flooded eyes where softness had glowed. As Davos relayed dire tidings of wildling unrest near the gift, Sansa watched Jon pivot from man to monarch, decisions sharpening his jaw. She realized then that desire alone would not suffice. To forge empire, they must navigate endless fires together, never letting flame consume what fragile tenderness had begun. She squared her shoulders beside him, absorbing Davos' report. We address it at dawn, she declared, matching Joan's flint. He flicked her a grateful glance. And so dawn found them astride fresh mounts, banners snapping in pale light, riding north to parley with free folk chieftains who bristled at talk of empires that sounded too much like southern chains. Sansa rode clad in gray leather stitched with white fur, hair coiled beneath hood. Jon bore Longclaw at hip, its pommel wolf glinting. Behind, Mormont spears and Karstark archers followed, and at rear padded Nymeria with her ghost pack scattering crows from treetop. Through fields still scarred by war they went, past cairns where bones of the dead lay under thin soil, past villages half rebuilt, where children halted play to watch the king and Lady Thunder by. At each crossroads, Sansa noted the eyes. Hope tempered by wariness. Empire was a dream, but dreams too often became nightmares. She steeled herself. We must be light for them, not storm. They reached last hearth on second night. Tormund awaited before charred gates, a mountain of red beard, bare arms despite snow. His grin split weather-chapped cheeks when he saw Jon, but his eyes flicked warily toward Stark banners. Over thick stew in the gutted great hall, Tormund growled. Empire means walls. Walls mean dead men like before. Free folk won't trade one ice cage for another. Jon set his spoon down. No cage, a shield. Raiders from sea, sellswords from south, winter storms. They kill as sure as any wall. Stand with us and you get grain, smiths. Healers, stand apart, and when lean months bite, we may not reach you in time. Tormund spat bone into hearth. You speak of trust. Sansa leaned forward. Trust is stone laid upon stone. It needs mortar. Let mortar be kinship, she inhaled. I propose marriages between Stark vassals and free folk voluntaries. 10 pairings to start. Bonds no treaty can match. Tormund eyed her. Bold wolf. Think kneelers will let their soft-skinned daughters bed wild men? Better wild men at hearth than at gate, Sansa replied, steady. And some daughters may choose adventure. A deep laugh boomed. True enough. We'll put it to the clans. That night, as Sansa unrolled her sleeping furs beside a dying ember, she wondered at how the words had flowed, to speak so boldly of marriage alliances when her own heart jittered at each glance from Jon. She was forging chains of others even as she forged her own. Jon approached, kneeling. Lantern light gilded his face. You were magnificent, he said simply. She brushed imaginary dust from her sleeve. Flattery. Truth. He hesitated. When this is done, when we are wed, what do you hope for? The question struck deeper than she expected. She considered. Not just survival. Not merely security. She saw children with auburn hair wrestling direwolf pups on green grass. Saw ships of White Harbor bearing grain south while northern banners waved unmarred. Saw laughter echo through Winterfell's halls unburdened by dread. She saw peace. Hope, she whispered, that the next generation forgets what war tastes like. Jon's eyes softened. Then let us carve that memory from the world. He brushed a kiss upon her forehead. Light as falling snow. She closed her eyes. Outside, wind keened through arrow slits. Yet within she felt, for the first time in years, warm. The march home took 4 days. Negotiations bore fruit. Tormund pledged 1,000 spears for planting seasons in exchange for seed grain, wool, and mutual defense. 10 potential marriage matches already whispered, with Mormont cousins among eager volunteers. Sansa penned each accord in riding tent while Jon sharpened blades. At Winterfell's gatehouse they found a new arrival. Mira Reed, mud-spattered but radiant, bearing a letter sealed with 3-headed dragon sigil, black as coal. Sansa's heart thudded. The Dragon Queen had answered. They convened inside the solar, candles guttering. Sansa sliced the seal. Daenerys' hand was elegant, firm. To Sansa Stark, Lady of Winterfell. The snow of my exile has melted yet, the embers remain. I have heard whispers of a northern empire. Of a Stark Queen of Ice and a Stark King of Snow. Empires frighten dragons, yet they also intrigue. I will come. Them? No date, no entourage size, only the promise. Sansa set parchment down. She comes to test our mettle. Jon's mouth tightened. Let us hope she does not bring dragonfire to heat the forge. Sansa exhaled. Either way, we must be ready. Night settled like a shroud, but Winterfell pulsed beneath with purpose. In courtyards smiths quenched steel. In kitchens cooks stirred cauldrons enough to feed visiting dragons and half the realm. In her chamber, Sansa traced Daenerys' flowing syllables, then tucked the letter beneath her pillow. Dreams that night were restless, a clash of wolves and dragons circling skies of storm-vaulted shadow. Morning delivered crisp sunlight and fresh anxieties. The wedding date was set on the first true day of summer, 7 weeks hence, when snows dwindled and roads softened. 7 weeks to transform political vow into covenant, flesh and bone. Awry. Sansa plunged into preparations anew, choosing weirwood blossoms to braid through her hair, selecting lords to witness, drafting oaths before Hearttree as old gods looked on. Jon trained day and night with guard, but sometimes she glimpsed him atop the battlements at dusk, staring south where horizon bled rose. She wondered if he imagined dragons beating wings across that reddened sky, or if he sought his own father's ghost in clouds. One late evening he found her in the library, candlelight pooling atop vellum tomes of Stark lineage. He held a small box of carved weirwood. Wordlessly he offered it. Inside lay a circlet wrought of silver interlaced with direwolf heads twin. Between their muzzles nestled a single milky moonstone. It was Mother's, Jon said softly. She wore it as betrothal token from father. I kept it hidden all these years, thinking it would never find rightful place. Sansa touched the moonstone. Cool. Smooth. Your mother was Lyanna Stark, she said. Then this belongs to both of us. Jon's brows lifted, surprised. Slowly, he removed the circlet and, with trembling care, set it upon her brow. She looked up at him through lashes. Do I look a queen? He smiled, rare and unburdened. You look Sansa Stark of Winterfell, which is better. They stood thus for long heartbeats. Library dust motes, drifting like luminous snow. Then clarion horns blared outside, scouts sighting a banner on the King's Road. Daenerys' daught. Or another threat. Their moment folded back into duty. Jon offered his arm. She took it. Together they descended to meet whatever came. 5 weeks remained, and the story of the Northern Empire had only begun to ink its prologue. Wolves had bared fangs, krakens tested tide. Free folk weighed freedom against hunger. Dragons wheeled somewhere beneath southern stars. And at the heart of it all, in a castle reborn from ruin and frost, 2 souls who had weathered every cruelty the world could hurl, now dared to bind scars into strength, hearts into heart. The forge fires of Winterfell roared high, sparks spiraling to heaven where old gods and new watched in wordless council. Whether they smiled or frowned, none could know. Only that the smoke curled upward, carrying with it the first bright breath of an empire not yet born, but stirring. Restless, in the womb of northern night, snowmelt trickled from the gutters of Winterfell like tiny silver threads when the dragons were first sighted. The watchmen upon the eastern rampart cried warning, though the morning air carried no menace beyond their own memories of fire and ruin. The crack of wings, vast, leathery, powerful, beat once, twice in the high vault of cloud. Then the dark silhouette of Drogon eclipsed the pale disk of the sun. For a breathless instant, the yard below plunged into a false dusk. Every soul, from lords draped in sable and ermine to scullions bent over washtubs, froze beneath the dragon's shadow. Children dropped sticks, grooms slackened reins, dogs tucked tails with instinct older than language. Even the direwolves halted, hackles bristling, crimson and amber eyes fixed skyward. On the battlements, Jon's fingers closed around the stone parapet, knuckles whitening. He felt a pulse of memory, blackened stone. Screams, the crackling roar that devoured King's Landing. That had been another city, another life. Yet the brute majesty of the dragon called forth every scar he carried, visible and buried. Sansa stood beside him, copper hair coiled beneath a hood of finest silver wolf fur. She too watched Drogon's descending spiral with eyes narrowed against the glare of sun on scale. Wind rippled her cloak, tossing strands loose. They had spoken of this moment countless times in silent conjecture. How to greet the mother of dragons, how to measure alliance and threat. Now words abandoned her, leaving only the thud of blood in her ears. Lower Drogon came, as deliberate as a king settling upon his throne. A second dragon, a smaller, green-scaled beast, the size of a river galley, banked behind, wings whistling. Regal, Doll. There circled once, scattering ravens from the rookery spire, then tucked their wings and swooped toward the Godswood clearing Sansa had ordered cleared of snow and debris. Pine boughs bent, the great trees quivered, and 2 columns of steam rose where the dragons exhaled, a warning breath upon untouched frost. Snow hissed to water, vapor plumed. Only then did Daenerys Targaryen set foot upon northern soil. She dismounted Drogon's neck with the agile grace of a cell-sail nimbly quitting rigging, dark leather riding gear cinched about a frame leaner than rumor suggested. Silver gold hair whipped across her cheek, plaited into braids bound by rings of blackened steel. Behind her followed a retinue small but striking, Missandei of Neath in sea-green silks, Grey Worm armored in unsullied black, and 2 Dothraki blood riders, whose arcs gleamed like crescent moons unwilling to be hidden under cloaks. The mother of dragons lifted her chin toward Winterfell's looming walls, as if reading each arrow slit for portents. A gust of snow dust whirled about her boots. Her eyes, a violet near as startling as freshly split amethyst, flicked upward to the battlements. Jon released the parapet. "Come," he murmured. They descended by spiral stone, boots striking steps, damp from thaw. Jon felt the hush within the tower, each corridor hushed like a cathedral aisle before vows are made. Outside at the gatehouse, the pair emerged to an assembly both anxious and awestruck. Lord Manderley, cheeks ruddy as frost-bitten apple. Lady Barbary Dustin with mastiff straining at its leash. Lyanna Mormont balanced on the balls of her small feet, with a soldier's poise. Maester Wolkan clutching parchments as though they might shield him from dragonfire. Armor clinked, banners stirred, but no voice broke the expectant silence. Jon and Sansa passed between their people, snow crunching beneath their boots. The wind carried the iron smell of dragons, a scent like hot forged scale and stretched leather, tinged faintly with sulfur. It mingled with pine and hearth smoke, a reminder that outside these walls ancient powers answered to none but themselves. Ahead, Daenerys stepped forward, her retinue fanned in disciplined half-circle. Drogon and Rhaegal crouched behind like titanic cats lazing in midday warmth, though coils of smoke still curled from their nostrils. Sansa caught the faint shimmer of heat baking air above them. Jon halted 4 paces away. Sansa matched him. For a breath nobody bowed, and time hung suspended like a coin atop knuckles. "Your Grace?" Jon said, voice carrying clear across the yard. Daenerys studied him. In those jewel-like eyes flickered recognition of the man who once bent the knee. Yet the Jon who faced her now wore a direwolf cloak heavy across shoulders, broader with command. Long claw sheathed in new scabbard chased silver. Crown absent by choice but authority unmistakable. She inclined her head the barest degree, acknowledging not quite subordinating. "King Jon." Her tone balanced steel and courtesy. "Lady Sansa." Sansa inclined her head, neither high nor low. "Queen Daenerys, Winterfell welcomes you." "Winterfell endures," Daenerys replied, gaze sweeping the ancient stones. "I am pleased to see it rebuilt." Manderley cleared his throat behind Sansa, but she raised a subtle hand. "Hold silence." Diplomacy moved with slower steps than anxiety. Jon gestured toward the keep arch. "You must be cold. Come inside. There's hot wine and roast venison waiting." A wisp of humor curved Daenerys' lips. "The snow is invigorating, but I will accept your hospitality." She turned, murmured quick Valyrian to Grey Worm. The unsullied captain barked instructions. 24 spearmen remained beside the dragons, while a smaller escort followed their queen through Winterfell's gate. As Sansa led the procession, she felt tension string her spine. Every carved doorframe, every corridor arch passed beneath those violet eyes felt weighed. She noted Daenerys' quiet, perilous grace, like a blade concealed in silk. At cross corridor where servants bustled, the visitors' boots left wet prints but no dragon soot. The beasts waited beyond, though their rumbling breaths vibrated the flagstones. In the great hall, fires roared. The dais offered twin high-backed chairs under the direwolf banner, newly mended. On the long tables a feast steamed, platters of elk haunch glazed with birch syrup, trencher loaves honeyed, winter greens tossed with pickled crabapples, and ewers of mulled wine rich with clove. Servants watched wide-eyed as the Dragon Queen entered. Jon gestured to the shorter chair set at his right, honor place for a guest sovereign. Daenerys accepted with a nod, cloak shrugged to a waiting girl. Beneath, her riding leathers bore subtle tracery of dragons twined around vertical seams. A motif echoed in the silver stag hilt at her belt. She sat. Her retinue gathered behind. Jon waited until she had tasted wine before seating himself. Sansa claimed the taller throne by his left. Smoothing skirts of dusk blue velvet heavy with wolf head embroidery and moon thread. Warmth of hearth flared along the row of lesser lords. Murmurs rose, tentative toasts, the scrape of bench legs. Daenerys sipped, eyes closing in appreciation of spice. Then she set cup aside and addressed the hall. "My thanks for this welcome. I come not as conqueror but as guest-seeking friends. The north has endured fires beyond winter's cold. I am not blind to the scars my dragons may stir in memory. Yet dragons can protect as well as destroy." Yon's voice answered, low yet resonant. The North respects strength tempered by wisdom. Your arrival proves both. Barbary Dustin's eyebrow arched. Dragons may shield us indeed, but at what cost? Daenerys' gaze flicked to the Lady of Barroton, blue-gray eyes sparking. Protection bought with justice is no cost at all, my lady. I ask only fair accord. Sansa leaned forward, palms resting on table edge. Accord is why we summoned you, your grace. We seek alliances that knit north and south against common threats. A noble purpose, Daenerys said, tone unreadable. Yet the word empire travels your valleys on every raven's wing. Empires devour. I know. My ancestors built one with dragon fire. Now, and saw it crumble, Manderley murmured behind stew steam. Their mistake was ruling through fear alone. Daenerys answered without turning. I would not repeat that. Sansa met the Dragon Queen's eyes across garland of roasting herbs. Nor would we. We aim to bind our realm by oaths of mutual need. The South fractures daily. 5 crowns. 6 claimants. Endless war. A stable North may offer refuge of sanity. She paused. But stability must first be secured. We hoped you might help us achieve that, rather than see us as rival. Then? Daenerys tilted her head, braids glinting. Help you how? Jon's chair creaked as he shifted. The Ironborn menace our coasts. Southern cell sails sniff profit. Free folk still heal. A single dragon in northern sky would turn many ambitions southward. And in return, a challenging softness. Grain, Sansa said before Manderley could protest. Or from our mines, a corridor for trade with the free cities through White Harbor, untaxed for Targaryen ships. Daenerys considered. Flames danced in her pupils. Generous, but my people are few. Grain is welcome, or less so. What I lack is legitimacy in eyes of lords south of the neck. She traced rim of cup. For that, I require allies both strong and unassailable in honor. Her gaze shifted to Jon. A king beloved by his people, for example. Silence spread like ripple of ice over pond. Jon's shoulders squared. Sansa's breath stilled. He spoke first. I am pledged to wed my cousin. That union will forge the empire you question. Daenerys' lips parted, perhaps in surprise. Perhaps calculation. I had heard whispers. Words on parchment carry faint truth until tasted. She looked to Sansa Ta. Your choice is bold, my lady. Necessity breeds boldness, Sansa replied evenly. Our bannermen will rally behind Stark joined to Stark. And our children will bear that name undisputed. Daenerys leaned back. Then I wish you joy. The words were sincere enough, yet Sansa sensed a shift. Like wind, changing before storm. Let us set aside power for tonight, the Dragon Queen continued. We are guests and hosts. Tell me, what songs do northern minstrels sing in times of tentative hope? Lyanna Mormont, seated lower with other captains, barked laughter. They sing of the long night ending and the promise that cold may sleep. She thrust chin upward. But they also sing of dragons devouring traitors. More tuneful than you'd think. A ripple of nervous laughter. Daenerys' smile sharpened, but she inclined her head to the bear girl. Perhaps I will learn the melody before I depart. Sansa exhaled, tension loosening fraction. Conversations resumed. Dishes circulated, jugs poured. Yet beneath the surface of feast, new eddies churned. Sansa felt them as an undercurrent. The wary curiosity of northern lords toward this silver-haired queen. Daenerys' restrained watchfulness of each reaction. Jon's subtle shifts of posture as he balanced respect for foreign power and protection of his own. Across the dais, their eyes met occasionally. Each glance anchored them amid tides of suspicion. Hours later, when torches guttered low and music dwindled to murmured strings, Daenerys rose. The journey taxes even dragon riders, he said. I would seek rest. Jon beckoned a page. Our finest guest chambers are yours. Thank you, King Jon, she replied. And Lady Sansa. May our talks tomorrow nourish as well as tonight's feast. She withdrew, entourage flowing in her wake. Unsullied boots thumping like a drum fading down corridor. Only when the door shut behind them did conversations in the hall swell. Whispers layered atop speculation. Barbary Dustin took to her feet, calling for more drink. Manderley wandered to speak with Karstark. The children of smaller houses exchanged excited gossip of dragons roosted within arrowshot. Sansa waited until the queen's presence no longer weighed upon the room. Then she leaned to Jon. She came sooner than I feared, but with fewer soldiers than I expected. She doesn't need soldiers, Jon muttered, gaze drifting toward shuttered windows that flicked with dragonfire glow. She has those. She will calculate what price to demand. She already has. He stood. Tomorrow we discover if we can afford it. He offered his hand. She took it. Together, they descended the dais and slipped into the quieter hush of corridors. Later, in their respective chambers, sleep eluded both. Sansa sat at her walnut dressing table, brushing copper strands while Beth the maid unlaced gown ties. Candleflame kissed moonstone circlet upon her brow. Beth ventured timid conversation. How astonishing the dragons, how lovely the queen's braids. Sansa listened, smiling faintly, but her mind mapped alliances. Dragons on their side could frighten away southern coalitions. Dragons wary could incinerate empire in embryo. She dismissed Beth only after instructing her to bring fresh parchment by dawn. In the tower across the yard, Jon stood at a narrow window. Longclaw unsheathed and balanced lightly across his palms. Moonlight shimmered along the Valyrian edge, memory of countless battles. He thought of Daenerys' eyes. How hope and pain warred within them like twin storms. He thought of Sansa's calm. How she faced dragonfire with the same steel she once turned against Ramsay's terror. Empire, people called it. But empire was only mortar of trust poured between stones of necessity. He wondered whether trust could bear the weight of scaly wings. Dawn shattered quiet with a boom of horns. Sansa thrust aside blankets, heart jolting. She hastened to window. No raid, no storm. Only gatehouse guards saluting arrival of riders from the Dreadfort's ruins. House Ryswell's envoy, colors dull red on brown. Safe enough, yet her nerves remained taut as loot gut. She dressed swiftly, summoning Beth for Wolf mantle. By the time she reached the council chamber, a converted solar lined with fresh maps, Jon already sat with Davos, Maester Wolkan, Yara Greyjoy newly docked, Mira Reed cloaked in damp moss green, and Lady Barbara. Daenerys occupied a high chair opposite Jon, Missandei by her shoulder. The maps glowed with morning sun. Lady Sansa, Daenerys greeted, making room at table's head. We were discussing the coastline. Specifically, Yara added, how Kraken ships might patrol the shivering sea, in concert with dragons overhead. Her grin was sly. Some would call it overkill. I call it good fun. Sansa seated herself. The more thorough the shield, the better. Grey Worm unfurled a rough parchment. Our scouts sailed east of Skagos, locating a sheltered cove suitable for dragon landing and supply depot. With minor fortifications it becomes forward. Base should Southern Fleet threaten. Bendawar. Barbary's eyes narrowed. Fortifications manned by Unsullied? Occupation by any other name? I propose joint garrison, Daenerys interjected. Half Stark men, half Unsullied. My soldiers obey discipline without question, but they will heed your commanders. Jon leaned over the table, studying the cove's drawn cliff outline. It could work. Supply roads from last Hearth feed the post. Winter storms brutalize that coast, but Unsullied have endured worse. Davos tapped the parchment. We still need shipyards. White Harbor's backlog is 3 winters deep. No. Yara laughed. Let the Ironborn build EM. Better we carve coin from peace than raid for scraps. I'll send my shipwrights, but I want equal birthrights. Sansa contemplated. Done. If raiding along northern shores ceases. Yara shrugged. Wasn't profitable anyway. Agreed. The morning passed in such exchanges, Point for counterpoint. Suspicion for concession. Sansa noted Daenerys' deft ability to deflect affront without bending knee. Where Manderley pressed for fish tariffs, she offered alternative goods. When Barbary bristled at unsullied outposts, she proposed warden rights to Stark bannermen. Each compromise wove another thread in an ever-tightening tapestry. By midday, the map of coast and inland held fresh ink. Garrison marks, patrol routes, trade corridors. Daenerys rolled the chart, binding with a red ribbon. I will give Drogon the skies southward over rills. Rhaegal shall guard the shivering. Let would-be invaders test their courage. Damn. Sansa exhaled, sensing the hall shift, like a window had opened to let stale air out. Progress, though fragile. Yet peace seldom settles without testing. That night, the attempt on Daenerys' life came. Snow-muted footfalls upon the North Tower stair. A cloaked shape crept, breathing shallow. Gloved hand clutching glass vial opaque with viscous milk-white liquid. Ahead, unsullied posted at Queen's door stood silent. But they were few. Half-watching corridor's other end were servant girls' ferried linens. The cloak's hood concealed thin, clean-shaven face. A squire from Barrowton household, now assassin. He had slipped past steward rosters with a forged assignment to kitchen work. Broken wax on unguarded storeroom, to find the vial prepared in Old Town's apothecary dens. The liquid, basilisk blood, and certain grave-grown fungi, killed quick, leaving faint chill like winter in the veins. Perfect for chalice of spiced wine. He neared the door, slipped behind a tapestry alcove. Heart hammered. One unsullied turned, marched away on routine corridor circuit. Data, 30 breaths. He emerged, flint with resolve. A shadow detached from darker shadow, Nymeria. The dire wolf's low growl reverberated like cave-born thunder. The assassin froze, eyes widening as yellow gaze met his. Nymeria bared fangs. He bolted, but stone hall betrayed. Nymeria lunged, jaws closing on cloak hem, wrenching. The vial flew from his grasp, shattering upon flagstone with hiss of acid. Milky poison splattered across boots. Splashing wolf's fur, Nymeria yelped, releasing him in shock. The assassin ran, cloak fluttering, into path of returning unsullied who speared him through thigh before he raised dagger. He collapsed, blood darkening paving. Within heartbeats the corridor swarmed. Ghost pounding to sister's side, Sansa in night robe clutching lantern, Jon behind with sword drawn. Grey worm pinned assassin, blade to throat, his eyes ice. Daenerys, unarmored, emerged from chamber, hair unbound yet presence regal. Sansa knelt by Nymeria. Stench of poison. Fetch warm water. She ordered Beth, arriving breathless. Ghost snarled near assassin, but Sansa's fingers parted Nymeria's singed fur, relief coursing as no skin blistered. The dose, it seemed, ate only surface hair. Daenerys surveyed the shattered vial, nostrils flaring. Basilisk blood. She pronounced, rare in the north. Someone planned this. Jon faced the captive. Name your master. The squire spat blood. No master. North for the Northy. He coughed ragged. Dragons bring fire. Fire kills again. Barbary Dustin arrived, eyes hard as obsidian. Recognition flashed. That boy wears my cousin's colors. Jon's voice chilled stone. We will learn who sent him. Grey worm. Hold him under guard. No harm until truth spoken. Sansa met Daenerys' gaze. In that violet depth, she saw mingled fury and hurt, yet also understanding of the North's fear. She spoke softly. This act does not reflect Winterfell's will. Allow us to make it right. I will grant you opportunity, Daenerys said. She lifted hand. The unsullied hefted prisoner away, spears glinting. Sansa rose, blood of assassin smeared on hem. Jon touched her arm. She kept eyes on Daenerys. Your life is not only yours. she told the queen. It now shields ours. Whoever seeks to break this accord, strikes at the north as well. Then? Daenerys inclined her head. We share enemies, it seems. Her voice softened. I am grateful to your wolves. Ghost dipped muzzle. Nymeria shook scorched fur. Sansa stroked the she-wolf's flank. Jon sheathed Longclaw, and they dispersed into late-night hush, each carrying new gravity. Interrogation lasted days. The squire, named Jory Dustin, refused confession. Under Vulcan's drafts, he babbled half-truths, tales of a secret brotherhood sworn to keep dragons from northern sky. No proof. Meanwhile, Barbary railed at insult to her name, demanded trial by combat. Jon refused, citing need for wider investigation. Rumor slithered. Some whispered Risewell influence, others suspected Iron Bank gold, stirring old Florent loyalties. Yet Sansa sensed root deeper. Fear. Fear moved men like frost moved rivers. Slow, relentless, splitting rock asunder. She met Daenerys in Godswood midday, alone save 2 paces of unsullied. In the hush of Hearttree, red leaves fluttered. This place remembers blood, Daenerys murmured, palm brushing bark. I feel those eyes. They've watched kings and killers both, Sansa replied, and absolved none. Daenerys turned. Someone inside your walls plotted my death. Someone grasping at certainty. Sansa countered. They fear empires, dragons, old songs of conquest. Fear will not stay my dragons, Daenerys said, though her voice held sadness. But it needn't burn Winterfell either. She stepped closer, frost crunching. If you and Jon succeed, your northern empire, what then? You will eventually look beyond the neck. Sansa considered. Only if beyond threatens our folk. I'd sooner trade than march. Nemnen. No. Empires rarely rest content. The queen studied her. My advisors urge marriage alliances. Some propose I wed again. Sansa's chest tightened, but she kept voice steady. We stand upon wedding threshold ourselves. Our path is chosen. A laugh ghosted Daenerys' lips, brief and resigned. Then may your union forge peace. She pivoted toward Hearttree. I once believed destiny carved in dragon flame. Now I see destiny as like snow, reshaped by every footstep. Sansa watched, understanding flickering like dawn on fjord. Both had walked paths scorched by men's ambitions. Both rebuilt identity from ashes. Perhaps trust could grow in such soil. Days bled into weeks. Winterfell bustled. Looms clacked, weaving banners of direwolf entwined with flowering weirwood. Sigil of new empire. Smiths hammered medallions for guard breastplates. Risewell delegation arrived, professing ignorance and outrage at Jory's treachery, offering hostages as proof of innocence. Jon accepted none that nodded grim acknowledgement. Meanwhile, Daenerys dragons soared patrol arcs each dawn, their shadows casting hush over harvesters, yet bolstering confidence of settlements once raided. Free folk traders told tales of ironborn ships that turned heel at first glimpse of greenscale high against blue. Fear now worked for Winterfell. Within the keep, Jon and Sansa's relationship deepened in small gestures rather than grand declarations. A glance across council maps that said, I trust you. A shared mug of mint tea in kitchen after midnight tallies, steam clouding tired faces. The warmth of his cloak draped around her shoulders during an inspection at dusk, pin pricking her heart with remembered security. In the library they read old chronicles, arguing over Aegon's tax policies, laughter trailing between shelves like candlelight. One evening, as wind rattled shutters and Daenerys dined with Mira Reed discussing bog iron, Jon took Sansa's hand in corridor shadow. 7 days, he murmured. She smiled. 7 to. Are you afraid? Terrified. Her smile became softer, but also certain. Jon nodded, hair brushing his brow. He lifted her hand, pressed lips to knuckles. I vow never to let fear steal this from us. Sansa's chest filled with warmth bright as forge heart. And I vow we will build a realm worthy of wolves and children both. Nearby, a harper's tune drifted from hall. gentle notes of summer snowfall. They lingered, listening. The eve before the wedding dawned clear and cold, as if winter itself bent knee to watch union of its heirs. White banners unfurled across ramparts, edged with ice that caught sun, scattering rainbows. Villagers flocked from leagues, settling in makeshift camps beneath pine where vendors sold hot barley porridge and cider stewed with juniper. Children carved direwolf heads in snow, crows swooping for stray crumbs. Far above, Drogon circled once, a living eclipse. Cheering rose like surf when his roar shook sky. Even fear turned to awe. Inside, scent of beeswax and new rushes filled great hall. Sansa stood before a tall mirror of polished bronze. Her gown, a marvel of northern craft, shimmered silver-gray reminiscent of mist over frostfield, embroidered with rippling threads that suggested hidden leaves of godswood just beneath surface. Wolf heads clasped at shoulders, a narrow sash of moon-white fur belted waist. In her auburn hair nestled small white blossoms plucked from the heart tree, delicate, bleeding red at petal's core. The moonstone circlet crowned all, its twin direwolves glinting. Beth fastened final lace, stepped back. Tears welled. "You look as though the stories finally came true, my lady." Sansa's own eyes stung, but she blinked them clear. "We make them true," she whispered. Outside the door, soft rap. Mira Reed entered, bearing a length of pale green reed weave. "From Greywater marshes," she said, voice melodic as dripping water. "To bind sword handles, symbol of peace between wolf and frog." Sansa accepted with thanks, heart tugged by memory of another reed, gentle Jojen lost beyond the wall. 10 strokes of horn sounded. Time. Jon met her at the Godswood Bridge. He wore black leather chased with silver thread, a wolf's head brooch fastening heavy white cloak at right shoulder. Long claw at hip, hair brushed but wind tousled. He looked every inch the king shaped by storms. His eyes, when they beheld her, softened to sea mist, silver. They crossed wooden planks over steaming moat, past sentinel pines dusted with hoarfrost. Lords followed, banners rippling. Manderley in blue, Risewell in russet, Mormont in green, Karstark in white sunburst. Daenerys walked among them, flame-colored cloak bright against winter hues, dragons overhead weaving lazy guardianship. Within the Godswood, the heart tree glowed crimson beneath morning light. Direwolf's ghost and Nymeria waited, poised statues at flanking roots. Jon and Sansa stepped onto earthen dais of moss, thick as carpet. Maester Walken raised voice hymn-like. Old gods require no priests, yet words anchor ritual. He spoke of stark blood older than kingdom lines, of ice meeting ice to forge iron. He invited witnesses to silence, so that only wind among leaves and distant dragon cries remained. Jon took Sansa's hands. Breath fogged between them, mingling. "I pledge my sword and my soul," he said, voice steady. "I am of the north, but my heart beats in you, Sansa Stark, now and until the snows melt for all time." Sansa drew breath that tasted of pine and hope. "I pledge my wisdom and my will," she answered. "I am of the north, but my spirit walks beside you, Jon Snow Stark, in summer days and longest nights." They cut small lines across palms, wolf-head dagger for Jon, leaf-etched blade for Sansa. Pressing wounds together, blood mingled, bright red upon white skin. Nymeria howled, low and haunting. Ghost joined in a heavier counterpoint. Above, Rhaegal echoed with throaty roar, Drogon with deeper thunder. The sound carried across Winterfell, across assembled throngs, across land still healing. Walken bound their hands with the marsh ribbon and a strip of direwolf fur. "Blood to blood, heart to heart," he intoned. "Old gods witness, let no fear nor flame unravel what is tied." Jon lifted their joined hands, lips brushing wound. Sansa mirrored, tasting rust-sweet blood of them both. When they kissed, applause burst from chosen lords, from free folk watchers perched in low branches, from children by moat. Bells clanged from broken tower newly fitted with bronze tongue. Snow flurried in bright halo, though sky remained blue. an omen some would later claim of blessing from old gods. Feast followed, long tables sprawling past great hall gates into courtyard, roasted boar and salmon, berry pies, barrels of mead cleaved open. Minstrels plucked harp, free folk drums thumped, Dothraki horsehair fiddles wailed strange but infectious rhythms. Sansa danced thrice with Jon, once with Tormund who stepped heavy yet joyful, once with Daenerys whose laughter rang crisp. The Dragon Queen's eyes sparkled not with envy but something akin to relief, a burden eased by witnessing hope realized. Evening deepened. Fireworks, Manderley imported from Karth, exploded trembling hues above ramparts. Drogon dodged shimmering cascades with bored flick of wing. Servants refilled cups. Cheeks reddened. Stories clashed and blended. Under arch of new moon, Jon stole Sansa away. They slipped into library, up ladder to secret alcove window where candles flickered low. Outside, revel carried on, but here, hush reigned. Jon traced her cheekbone. Wife. She smiled. Husband. He brushed lips to hers. Gentle shifting deepening with warmth born of mutual respect, grown to affection, grown to quiet undeniable love. Cloaks slipped, not hurried but deliberate, as though discarding weight long carried. They sank onto furs spread for just this purpose. Lantern glow painting golden light over skin, marked by scars. Hers faint line on belly from knife long past, his harsher across chest, from life tested. They traced each, acknowledging histories while weaving new present. After, they lay entwined, sharing whispered plans. She dreamed of formalizing council where free folk chieftains held equal voice. He envisioned roads safe enough for children to chase fireflies at dusk. They plotted clever taxes to fund orphanages, draft horse breeding to replace those lost in wars. The future unfurled between them, like map newly inked. Knock rapped gentle. Sir Davos, voice muffled. Apologies, your graces, urgent raven. Jon dressed quickly, Sansa covering with fur. Letter unfurled bore Blackhaven's sigil. Word that coalition of Storm's End. Highgarden's regent Lady Lyanette Fossaway, and a Lannister cousin forged pact to reclaim Riverlands, citing northern expansion threat. Ships massed at Maidenpool, armies ready come autumn. Sansa read at Jon's side. She exhaled. So soon. They fear stability, Jon said. She nodded, resolve steady. Then we give them reason to reconsider. He squeezed her hand. Empire's first test. She met his gaze, pulse calm. We'll meet it together. Within 3 days, War Council convened. Daenerys, seated beside Jon, offered dragon support. Yara promised 20 swift raiders. Free folk chiefs vowed skirmish scouts. Yet Sansa urged caution. War drains coffers before it drains blood. We must show strength without drawing northern farmers from spring fields. Jon agreed. He dispatched Raven to King Gendry, urging mediation. Daenerys penned letter to Lady Fossaway, Queen to Regent, reminding that dragons once torched Caswell rebels for less. Sansa drafted proclamation of open trade route via twins offering toll reduction to any southern house refusing to march. Carrot and cudgel both. Meanwhile, assassin Jory Dustin broke under prolonged interrogation. A cabal named Swords of the True Winter, financed by Shadow Frogs of Bravos, aimed to frame House Dustin to fracture alliances. The revelation vindicated Barbary. Sansa publicly absolved her cousin's honor. Barbary knelt, pledged 300 swords for monarchy's cause. Trust threads tightened. Summer unfurled green across north sooner than many winters passed. Wheat swayed gold by white knife banks. Children laughed, chasing dog-sized dragon hatchlings. Little regals, gift from queen to realm, guarded wings bound until growth. The coastal garrison rose, stone by iron by hope. Trading cogs from Tyrosh sailed harbor banners quartered with direwolf and dragon, holds laden with glass candles, saffron, silk, date, D. Beyond the neck, tensions simmered but lines remained uncrossed. Lady Fossaway delayed muster, citing harvest. King Gendry publicly condemned unsanctioned aggression. The Lannister cousin withdrew to patchwork Westerlands. Shamed by brazen threats, the first storm against Northern Empire fizzled to squall. Yet storms eternal brew. Far to east, whispers of Volantine triarchs courting exile Golden Company reached Winterfell. In Isle of Faces, rumors spoke of green men stirring after centuries asleep, delighting maesters into fretful scribbles. And on the wall, though Night King fell, ancient stones cracked under summer sun, promising the eventual crumble and releasing unknown terrors. Jon and Sansa kept vigil. Each dawn they met at parapet, coffee steaming in iron mugs, surveying kingdom. He teased that she drank too bitter. She countered he needed sleep. They oversaw road building, grain redistribution, fosterage exchange, Karstark boy living with free folk, spearwife child, studying at last Hearth's Maester Tower. Step by patient step, empire of ice and iron-thawed hearts, old set. In quiet moments, Sansa sometimes walked Godswood alone. She laid hand upon heart tree, felt pulse of red sap. She would recall the girl once enamored of golden nights and songs. Scarcely understanding power, that girl had died, yet left seeds. From them rose woman who shaped realm, not with songs but strategy, who still believed in beauty yet forged it from pragmatic steel. One evening as sun set violet, she joined Jon atop highest broken tower. Wind tousled their hair. Drogon glided distant above pink clouds. "Look," Jon whispered. Below, torches flickered along newly completed King's Road to White Harbor. Steady chain of light unbroken, like necklace across dusky land. Farmers led oxen carts, merchants rode mules, free folk walked hand in hand with Umber cousins. Peace in motion. Sansa leaned into Jon's side. "It's beginning." He wrapped arm around her. "A northern empire not of conquest, but of kin. Still will need claws," he said, smiling. He tapped long claws wolf pommel. "We have claws. And wings," she added, watching Drogon roar across horizon blazing. They stood until stars pricked black. No prophecy guided them. No gods whispered certain fate. But they held each other atop stone older than dynasties, and knew that regardless of tempests ahead, they would meet them not as lone wolves, but as mated pair bound by blood oath and burgeoning love. A force perhaps rarer than dragonfire. Hope forged in winter's heart, tempered by shared will, sharp enough to carve a future 5 kingdoms forgot to imagine. Seasons would tell the rest. Battles contested. Treaties signed. Children born in wolfskin, swaddling beneath dragon lullaby. But that night, as moon cast silver upon white banners, snapping proud across Winterfell's towers, the world paused to breathe. Snowmelt gutters trickled soft, dragons dreamed above clouds, and the Northern Empire exhaled its first unburdened sigh. Alive, newborn, resolute, a testament that even in the direst cold, life finds root and love, improbable yet unyielding, can ascend to rule alongside ice and iron together. Okay. MD1. A copper sky folded itself over Winterfell on the first harvest day, tinting the rows of barley in strange dusky flame. Fat heads of grain bent under their own promise. Wind rolled through them in lazy waves that sounded like surf striking a distant shore. Sansa stood on the wooden walk atop the new northern granary, palms spread over the rough beam Jon had carved with the first glyph of their shared sigil, a direwolf half-sheathed in the leaves of the heart tree. Beneath her boots the planks still smelled of pitch. To the east, a convoy of wagons creaked toward the keep, iron-shod wheels dusting the air with chaff and laughter. Children ran ahead of the oxen, daring one another to pluck kernels from hanging bundles before the teamsters' mock scolds could land. She drew a slow breath, letting the sensations settle. This fragile sense of rightness, no raven report could convey. For the span of a heartbeat, she forgot the letters stacked on her desk, the cipher from Pike, the bleak whispers out of Old Town. There was only wheat and wind, and the sure knowledge that her people would eat through winter without selling the last iron pot from their hearths. She closed her eyes and thanked the old gods in a silent pulse of thought. Footsteps sounded behind her. Soft, measured. When she turned, John had already swung up the ladder, snow-melt hair tousled by the climb. Cheeks flushed. He carried a leather tube, inked with the black three-headed dragon, and a stack of smaller correspondence bound by rush twine. 2 ravens, he said, tapping the larger tube against his palm. One from Dragonstone, the other from Goldtown. I thought you'd rather read them on open air than amid all those candles. A smile tugged his lips. The sun struck his eyes, and she glimpsed the faint green flecks she only noticed when light angled just so. Sometimes, she admitted, I need to feel wind while I read whatever storms approach. He passed her the letters. They both gazed out across the rippling barley, while she loosened the dragon's seal. Daenerys' script flowed in severe, elegant Valyrian cursive, translated in a second clear hand she recognized as Missandei's. The lines spoke of 2 matters. First, a successful patrol where Rhaegal's roar dispersed corsair galleys off Sisterton. The second, more troubling, a Triarch envoy in Pentos, hosting captains of the Golden Company. Mutual interest, the Queen cautioned, can birth mutual ambition. She recommended a joint delegation to Braavos, Targaryen authority and Northern trust presented in one voice. Sansa folded the parchment, lips pursed. The merman's coffers run fat with this year's saffron harvest, she murmured. If Volantis courts the Sellswords with coin, Myr will counter with influence. The Triarchs enjoy balance, not certainty. An empire, ours or hers, tilts things. Then, Jon nodded, and the Sellswords thirst for a war they can win. If the Reach won't hire them, they'll find a cause ready to hand. She opened Gultown's letter. Lord Grafton's steward wrote of southern knights landing in 2s and 3s, wearing the badge of a golden skull surmounted by a crown. Nothing official, but enough to quicken rumor that King Gendry might grant passage to any force aligned against northern hegemony. Gultown's walls could hold, but only if paid. Gold passes fingers faster than grain, Sansa said, handing him the page. We must answer this before it spreads. Jon leaned on the rail, scanning distant hills beyond Wintertown. Daenerys suggests Braavos. Walken's accounts say we can fund a mission. Barely. But Braavos cares less for banners than for numbers on ledgers. We need leverage. Her gaze drifted to the granary roof, where brand new pigeon coops waited to be filled. Steel and fire had won one war. Perhaps feather and ink would win the next. Braavos hates instability near its shipping lanes. Offer them a 10-year tariff reduction on the Neck Canal route we're digging, and guarantee escort of Braavos cogs past Skagos by Kraken and Dragon both. They'll see profit faster than any Sellsword promise. Bendero. Jon smiled, straightening. Now who's the merchant prince? I learned from the best, she said, nudging his elbow. Wyman Manderley sets a sly example every time he counts fish. Then we send Davos and Mira with Daenerys, Jon decided. Davos understands sea coin, and the Reeds can speak half a dozen dialects. Dragons for awe, a smuggler for numbers, and a Crannog woman no one expects. Bah! Sansa brushed a fleck of straw from his shoulder. You should go too, my love. Queens respect kings more than envoys. And leave you here to juggle a half-finished empire? He shook his head, but his smile warmed. We walk this step together. She tucked the scrolls under her arm, savoring the reassurance of we. Then together, she said. They descended. In the yard, Sir Lyanna Mormont practiced spear sets with a free folk girl named Bright Thistle, each thrust punctuated by barking critiques from Tormund Giantsbane sprawled on a bale of hay. Glover carpenters fitted a new tall gate, iron banding smoke to deep red. Manderley's master cook directed an open hearth where barrels of pickled herring were salted for the Queen's next visit. All through the bustle, Sansa saw glimpses of the tapestry she and Jon had begun. Wolf and bear, kraken and dragon, flayed man detested but tolerated, men of the watch walking free with wildlings. For every frayed thread, 2 more caught and bound. Yet shadows lengthen where light pools. That night, while candles flickered low in the strategy chamber, Ghost stiffened at the hearth. A hiss of air swept under the sill. Jon rose, hand to Longclaw. A small bolt of parchment, wrapped tight, jutted from between mullioned panes. He worked the latch, retrieved it, and slit the wax with his thumb. Under a cipher of crossed tridents lay a single sentence in heavy, scratchy script. "The faceless do not buy, they collect." No mark, no signature. Jon handed it to Sansa. A chill kissed her spine. In childhood she had heard old Nan's stories of faceless men, but that had been ghost tale. Since ruling, she had collected real whispers, that the Iron Bank sometimes paid House of Black and White to steer politics with a single death, that no wall stopped them, no guard deterred. But the bank was poised to treat. An assassin's note hinted at someone else, someone intending to frighten them from the canal bargain. She kept expression still, folding the strip into her sleeve. "Fear is a cheap coin," she said quietly. "Someone tosses it hoping we'll pay more for security, or hoping we'll cancel the delegation." Jon replied. She rested a palm on his arm. "We'll double watches, yes, but we won't bend." They emerged to the corridor. A sconce flickered, guttering sudden as though a breath of cold had kissed it. Sansa steadied herself with memory of darker corridors in King's Landing, of court where poison flowed sweeter than arbor wine. Winterfell was her home. She would not let fear make it foreign again. 3 nights later, Daenerys arrived astride a young black mare, her dragons circling high to roost in the Frostfang foothills. She shed her riding cloak in the council hall, cheeks ruddy, eyes alight. "Good," she said after the initial greetings. "We move quickly if we're to forestall the Golden Company. Drogon will escort only to Bravos Harbor. Beyond that, Essosi Prince's red dragon wings as threat." Davos grunted agreement. "Storms brewing in the Stepstones, your graces. If we sail within 2 days, we cut the wave." He laid out a parchment with the course. Mira Reed, slender as brushing reed grass itself, tied her braid tighter. "I have prepared vials of Crannog tincture. A drop clouds the blood for poisons faceless or otherwise." Sansa pushed parchment bearing her tariff proposal across the table. "Use this. Offer a draft to the Iron Bank. If they balk, hint that Tyrosh would gladly purchase the lane at double cost. Bravos loathes paying rivals." Daenerys swept one finger over the ink as though coaxing latent fire to life. "You play their game well, Lady Sansa. I learned in courts sharper than Bravos." Her mind flashed to Cersei's smile, to Margaery's honeyed maneuvering. She set such ghosts aside. Jon reviewed guard rosters. 10 unsullied, 5 Stark spears, 2 Ironborn Marines. A needle-thin force able to melt into the free cities without fanning war alarm. They plotted their dawn departure across the shivering, hugging northern currents before cutting south. When the meeting adjourned, Daenerys paused beside Sansa Tartball. Softly, she asked, "And if Bravos demands more? They may wish for a promise of dragonfire should debt come due." "Ma'am?" Sansa met her gaze. "An empire that pays with fire cannot outlive its dragons." She let the words settle. "Offer them certainty instead. Restructure their inland grain routes with northern wagons. Food is gold no bank can mint." Daenerys' lips curved, touching a memory of Blackwater crates once traded. Food, not fire. She extended her hand. Sansa clasped it. In that contact, they recognized the simplest of truths. Both had lost too much to ever again mistake ruin for victory. Before dawn's pink rim, the delegation rode from Winterfell under escort of ghosts and ravens both. Nymeria shadowed nearly half a league, then turned to prowl the Wolfswood, unwilling to cross salt spray aboard ship. Sansa watched from the east tower until the line of torches vanished. When she descended, the keep felt hollow, a hearth with logs unlit. Yet emptiness breeds labor. She summoned stewards and set the next tasks. She spent mornings in the library with Grafton's missives, afternoons in the yard watching Sir Brienne train the fledgling Wolfspear Corps. Mixed ranks of Mormont, Ryswell, free folk, and even 2 tall Sarnori Sellswords, who had nowhere better to pledge. At night she walked the ramparts, lantern dangling, mapping constellations Bran once named as if their slow dance might whisper prophecy. One night she lingered outside the rookery, listening to ravens mutter. A rook hopped to the sill, cocking its head. She strode inside, nodding to Maester Wolken dozing over a ledger. He jerked upright, quill flying. "Nothing urgent, my lady," he stammered, wiping ink. "Just balancing stores." She smiled. "I envy you. Ledgers at least behave." "Until they don't," he muttered. But his eyes twinkled behind tired rims. They shared brief solace in routine. Days stretched. Twice, riders from the rills delivered crates of smoked cockles. A wedding debt repaid, their note said. She distributed them among households nearest the Dreadfort, winning shy smiles from folk who had known only flayed threats. Another time, a brave Osi loot arrived for her from Daenerys. Strings of silver so pure they seemed spun moonlight. Sansa traced the neck thoughtfully, hearing absent chords. She missed Jon. Letters flown by Swift Hawk came sporadically, each a patchwork of negotiations. The Iron Bank's Archon, stern and bearded, had warmed when Davos promised joint insurance for southern cargoes. Mira mesmerized a Quarthine broker with tales of the next glassy pool. Daenerys dined atop the Titan's Gate, dragons gliding distant like sparks across sky. Jon's words carried admiration for her strategy, but they also hinted fatigue behind the diplomacy. Sansa wrote back of harvest songs, of Brienne's latest militia drill, where a wildling boy bested 3 Karstarks, of a night when wind slipped through their window latching. And for an instant, she sensed him in the chill. The space beside her empty but expectant. Storm clouds eventually bank even in longest summers. Mid-afternoon. One crisp day, a rider in Greywater livery pounded up the causeway, horse-lathered, eyes wild. Sansa met him at the yard, cloak whipping. The message: a small fleet, banners of the crowned stag and the golden sun of the Reach, slipped anchor from Maidenpool, sailing north along the narrow sea. Scouts counted 30 sail. Levies from the Stormlands and Cell sails wearing the cobalt stripes of Lys. Their heading suggested Bay of Crabs, aimed not for Winterfell but for White Harbor's outer shoals. Sansa absorbed the words, mind-turning cogwheels. With dragons in Bravos, southern lords tested alternate seas. The Lyseni prized silver. They would sail cheap if possibility of plunder promised more. She summoned Lord Manderley to the high table that very hour. Wyman arrived wheezing, but his eyes gleamed cunning. "I can muster 5 war galleys from the harbor," he boomed. "But they'll need 2 days to fully crew. Combine them with Yara's swift cutter squadron at Skagos," Sansa said. "We lure the Lyseni into shoal channels where their wider keels ground. Then board." Manderley stroked his beard. "Risky, if tide changes." "We'll control the tide," she said. "Raise the harbor chain halfway, force them to anchor in the shallows at dawn. Our shore scorpions can pick rigging from there." "Bane." The Lord's grin cracked wide. "You've a kraken's marrow, my lady." She touched the moonstone circlet's rim, feeling its weight. A wolf's, perhaps. Wearing borrowed scales. That night she penned instructions, dispatched ravens to Skagos, Manderley, and Bear Island. Sir Brienne volunteered to ride east and coordinate wolf spear archers along the White Knife Cliffs. Sansa accepted, though her heart clutched letting the night take such risk. "Someone must oversee," Brienne insisted. "You're needed here." Delegation accepted. Sansa returned to her chamber, sat at the window, and stared into blackness where the shivering sea lay unseen. She imagined Jon's ship making harbor, him reading her letter about the approaching fleet, anxiety lighting his stern mouth. She prayed to the gods he would trust her plan. Prayed to the stranger he might never see the decks of those Lyseni galleons. A knock roused her. Lady Barbary Dustin entered carrying a tray of steaming oatcakes. Surprising gift, their alliance still new. Barbary placed it on table, eyes flicking to Sansa's weary face. "I watched you pen orders," she said dryly. "Your hand shakes only after you sign." Sansa smiled thinly, accepting a cake. After is safer than before. Barbary folded gloved hands. "Wars never end, girl. They hibernate." You think I scheme for old vengeance, yet I pray your new empire succeeds. Peace fills coffers better than graves, but make no mistake. Rest satisfied and sharks will nose blood. Sansa chewed, nodded. She had grown to respect this flinty woman whose past bristled with grudges, yet who now channeled them into pragmatic counsel. Then I will not rest. Good. Barbary's gaze softened marginally. Your father's kindness made many blind. Your steel may keep them seeing. Left alone again, Sansa reached for her quill. She wrote one more letter, to Jon, telling him of Barroton's words and how strange comfort could spring from unlikely soil. She sealed it with gray wax and a single pressed barley stalk. 3 dawns later, the White Harbor chain groaned into place, half hoisted across bay mouth, an invitation disguised as oversight. From her watch perch atop Wolf's Beacon, Sansa tracked the Lyseni sails as they appeared in the pale horizon. Striped blue and red, hulls sleek, oars chopping. Sun glinted off bronze rams. Yara's longships kept to shoals north of the chain, their black sails furled to appear mere fishermen. Manderley's war galleys floated beyond harbor breakwater, crew huddled low to decks, so they seemed undermanned. The Lyseni captain, sensing easy plunder, a rich port poorly defended, ordered forward. By mid-morning 10 Lyseni and 4 Stormlander cogs crossed submerged shallows, unaware that cunning dredgers had shifted sandbars overnight. The first hull scraped rock. Spray burst. Sansa, atop the beacon, flipped a blue standard. Signal. Shore batteries unleashed. Scorpion quarrels singing down like steel rain. Yara's longships swung in, axes biting rigging. Pirates vaulting rails. A roar rose from harbor. Manderley's men bellowing the old Northman charge. Freefolk warhorns howling. The water churned white with splintered planks. Sansa watched through polished lens, stomach tight. The fight seemed quick, but war always looked brief from distance. By noon flags of surrender fluttered. Smoke wisped from 3 burning cogs. Prisoners herded onto docks, shackled but alive. She exhaled, a long, trembling release. The chain clanked down, harbor open again. Brienne rode up beacon stairs 2 hours later, hair plastered from sea mist. Your trap worked, she reported, stripping gloves. Stormlander knights never saw Karstark archers until arrows pinned their helms. No Karstark fell. She smiled wearily. Manderley's men took 8 barrels of Lyseni wine as trophy. Relief pulsed. And casualties? 23 wounded. 6 dead. 4 from the Iron Isles, 2 Manderley. Brienne's expression sobered. We'll send families coin. We will, Sansa agreed, chest heavy for those names. That evening, White Harbor hosted impromptu moot. Yara advocating ransom of Lyseni officers, Manderley proposing exchange for fishing rights, Brienne cautioning honor. Sansa steered them toward compromise. Lyseni pay reparations in coin and 2 Scorpion ballistas. Released crew sail home with message that northern waters guard their own. Stormlander knights, near starved for coin, offered to swear fealty rather than face ransom. She accepted terms of parole requiring them to serve building the canal for 1 year. Grafton would send escorts. Ravens carried news across the realm. Some hailed it cunning, others called it pirate queen tactics. Either way, the north fed itself without dragons. Weeks later, Braavos answered. A column of black feathered birds swept into the rookery, each bearing fine vellum smelling faintly of sea, salt and spiced pine. Sansa hurried up tower steps, heart banging. Walken unfolded the first scroll. His brows shot up. The Iron Bank extends provisional credit, 2 million gold honors against the projected neck canal tolls. Interest deferred until year 5. Another scroll revealed Braavosi Merchant Guild Treaty, endorsing Northern Free City Mutual Safeguard Corridor, signed with Daenerys Flourish and Davos neat block letters. Sansa gripped the windowsill so hard her knuckles blanched. Winterville would gain funds to finish the canal, build deeper quays at White Harbor, repair roads to the wall. A third scroll, Jon's own hand, spoke of successful talks but warned of unsettling rumor. A masked priest from Volantis, preaching that dragons must bow to the Lord of Light's black flame. Crowds gathered nightly on Sweetwater steps. Whispers claimed the priest's fingers glowed ember red. She scanned for Joan's closing lines. I think of you with each tide. Hold the north. It sings your name more than my crown does. I return before first snow. J. She pressed the page to her chest. Around her ravens croaked, ignorant of hearts. Yet no triumph stands unchallenged. The Iron Bank signature barely dried when Lord Grafton rode north bearing grim tidings. The Golden Company had signed a contract not with Volantis but with a faceless patron, rumored to bank in Tyrosh. 10,000 veterans would land in the Riverlands by winter's onset, splitting force between Stonehenge and Harrenhal. Their charter declared intent to restore true order to realms rent by wolf and dragon machinations. Rumor pinned King Gendry's covert blessing. Sansa convened the North's captains in the shadowed war room, where her father once taught archery stances. Brienne, fresh from White Harbor, stood tall. Yara, half drunk on victory, leaned against doorframe. Lyanna Mormont perched on stool, fists on knees. Barbary Dustin polished a dagger. Mira Reed returned early via Bravosian cog, laid new maps on table. Harrenhal's towers still broken. Mira began, but its walls thick as 4 men shoulder to shoulder. If the Golden Company holds there, they command the trident like a noose. Stone hedge pins supply, Lyanna added. Cut water there. Archers starve them out. Barbary sheathed dagger. We cannot besiege both without splitting hosts. Split, and we invite hammer anvil. Yara snorted. Then bleed their flank. My Krakens can raid Crackclaw Islands, force them to garrison coast. Sansa tapped knuckle on map. I. We will not make South the next battlefield. Her voice carried across murmurs. Golden Company thrives on open war. We starve it with uncertainty instead. Ben. Brienne arched brow. Meaning? We seed doubt about their paymaster's coin. If Tyrosh funds them, Bravos will loan equal sum to break them, provided we secure interest. She unrolled a parchment already inked, terms of credit backed by canal tolls. We leak rumor that our new treaty includes assassination clauses against sellsword captains. A company of that size falters when captains eye each other's cups. Barbary's eyes gleamed. Turn gold to poison. No need for actual blades. Actual blades as last resort, Sansa agreed. But sabotage first. Yeah. We prove the North can fight, yet chooses mind over massacre. Mending whined. Yara laughed low. Wicked. I like it. They spent hours weaving details. Merchant whispers in stepstones, forged accounts of Tyroshi default, offers of northern pardons for defecting elephants. Sansa wrote dispatch to Daenerys, summarizing plan and requesting Drogon's visible flight over Blackwater to spook rumor further. A dragon glimpsed by sellsword outriders could ignite legend faster than spy's tale. When meeting adjourned, Brienne lingered. Your strategy spares lives, she said quietly. Yet risk remains heavy on you. Sansa met her friend's earnest gaze. Every choice weighs, but I will not drag farmers into war to prove I can swing a sword. Brienne nodded, emotion in her blue eyes. If battle comes, I stand at your shield edge. Sansa squeezed her arm. And I at yours. Autumn crept in crisp whiffs of apple and smoke. Joan's fleet sailed up White Knife amid crimson leaves, cause of migrating geese. Sansa hurried to river dock, cloak swirling. When his black boots hit planks, she nearly broke decorum, jogging the last steps. He caught her, arms winding around waist, nose brushing her hair. You smell like parchment, she teased, tears pricking. And you like barley, he replied, voice hoarse. They drew back half an arm's length, eyes mapping each change. The trial of sea lines along his jaw, the deeper steadiness in her gaze. News exchanged, laughs shared, grief for the 6 fallen sailors in a sudden squall. Night found them in chambers, candles crackling. They spoke until stars paled of Triarch suitors. Of Mirish spices, Davos smuggled for winter feasts. Of Bravosi lute strings, Sansa strummed. Jon described the masked priest. How the man's eyes gleamed molten when speaking of Azor Ahai. Sansa recounted Harbor Victory, the Lyseni captain who recited vulgar poems in 3 dialects while signing surrender. Jon kissed her knuckles. "I never doubted," he said. "Lie," she whispered, smiling. "Only feared." He pulled her close. Later, tangled in furs, they lay silent. Sansa traced the old burn mark on his right shoulder, the ridged scar like small branches. He traced a freckle at base of her neck. "We build," she murmured. "Brick by barley grain," he agreed. Together. Winter's first flurries arrived early, swirling across harvested fields now stubbled gold. Jon and Sansa rode inspection south along the King's Road, halting at new mile-marker stones etched with both direwolf and dragon. Villagers lined road edges, pressing jars of berry jam, carved toys, embroidered mitts. Jon accepted each gift with humble nod. Sansa teased he would need a second horse. In turn, she gave them small copper stags minted with direwolf on reverse. First currency of the Empire. Children's eyes widened at the shine. At Moat Cailin they conducted moot with lords of the Neck. The ancient fortress, revived by reed ingenuity and Karstark stone masons, bristled with new watchtowers, shaped like heron beaks, siege scorpions perched on parapets. Here Sansa presented draft of the canal charter to assembled clan chiefs, detailing levies, toll passes, mutual defense. They debated 3 days. On the 4th, treaty sealed. A feast of frog-leg stew and boar ribs erupted under torchlit vaults. Jon danced lumbering two-step with Lady Smallwood. Sansa shared a slower reel with Mira, who laughed at her queenly boots stuck in muddy flagstones. Night outside. Sansa climbed a turret, drew cloak tight. Fog hung over swamps, curling silver ribbons around torch beacons. "Thinking of ghosts?" Jon asked, arriving. "Of faces in water," she said, remembering stories of green men and of faceless men. She told him of the cryptic note. Jon frowned. "I should have known earlier. It changed nothing," she said, though a shiver traced her spine. Fear loses power once revealed. He studied her solemnly. "Not all fear." She took his gloved hand, placed it over her racing heart. "This one bows to love." He kissed her forehead, and in the still hush of marsh wind, she felt the old god's watch. Wordless, distant, but perhaps not disapproving. By midwinter news drifted north. Golden Company captains quarreled over hidden debt. 2 elephants died mysteriously. Sellswords muttered about cursed coin. Rumors of faceless threats spread. Tyroshi bankers denied payments, and half the company refused to march beyond Harrenhal's shadow. Sansa's information war gnawed them from within. She dispatched secret stipend to a hedge knight inside their ranks, feeding stories of northern amnesty for any band returning east. Desertions ticked upward, but a beast cornered is most lethal. The Sellsword's commander, Broadarch Benaro, stung by desertion and suspecting northern sabotage, seized refugees along the Green Fork and threatened to burn each hamlet until the Wolf Queen delivered herself in chains. Sansa read the report in Jon's solar, lips pressed thin. "We can't let civilians suffer." Her hand shook just slightly. Jon paced, jaw taut. "Dragonfire ends it fast, but we can't always borrow Daenerys's wings." He halted. "We need a banner to unite our new armies without dragons present." "A symbol beyond fear," Sansa said. Her eyes lifted to the carved sigil above fireplace. "Wolf entwined in leaf." "Leaf and wolf," Jon mused. "Add ice and iron." He fetched parchment and sketched a sword, forged of twin metals, crossing direwolf brand. "Steel of winter." Sansa touched the design. "We ride south, just us and wolf spears, escort from Barrowton and White Harbor pikes." Jon fixed her with concern. "If we march, the north risks vacuum." "Vacuum invites more terror than our absence," she replied. "Brienne holds Winterfell. Manderley commands sea. Torment patrols beyond wall. We go. Decision sealed. They summoned captains. Ravens flew to Daenerys. Request Drogon fly far ridge west to feign main threat while they approached under cover of forest. Yara sailed south with Greyjoy firepods to draw sellswards off river lines. Every ally moved, each piece part aboard. On the eve of the long night's anniversary, snow stinging cheeks, Jon and Sansa mounted their horses amid wolf-spear ranks. Ghost padded front, eyes ablaze crimson. Behind ambled two juvenile dragons Daenerys had loaned, still wing-bound, but their growls potent enough to rattle hoarfrost from limbs. They rode south of Moat. Kaelin lay muffled in snow. Woods whispered. At dusk, they camped near Weirwood Grove. At dawn they moved, silent as flakes. Villagers glimpsed them, lifting prayers to old gods. Word traveled but stealth held. Near the gods' eyes' northern shore, they found carnage. Burned huts, trampled turnip field, charred toys. Sansa dismounted to lift a wooden horse seared black. She set it gently inside a ruined hearth, whispering promise of justice. Ahead, Golden Company outriders ranged. Strategy unfolded. Yaras raiders torched crates upriver, a decoy. Sellsword squads peeled away, chasing phantom plunder. At Jon's signal, wolf spears melted into pines, flanking. Sansa advanced with a small banner guard bearing the new sigil. Steel sword with intertwined wolf and leaf. Commander Benaro rode out, armor gilt, plumes shaking. Send your husband, wolf maid. He sneered across gap. I'll trade your head for my pay. Sansa held her rein steady. Snow dust glittered on her pauldrons. Pay, your purse tears. Tyrosh disowns you, Bravos hunts your contract. Bend knee, Benaro, and keep what honor remains. He barked laugh. Honor sells cheap. I bargain in gold. Then be weighed by it. She raised her gauntleted fist. From tree-line arrows whistled, spearing air around him in perfect star. His horse reared. He kept saddle, curses streaming. Sansa's voice cut across tumult. No one need die. Lay arms, march east unopposed. The north gives passage. Benaro's eyes flitted to the shafts. They could have killed him. Doubt flickered. Yet pride sword-edged his reply. I bow to no girl. A deeper roar split clouds. Drogon distant, yet sound thundered. Benaro's men craned skyward, their commander blanched. But it was the juvenile dragons trotting from pines, wings bound but jaws steaming, that cracked their nerve. One sniffed, exhaling white smoke that hissed upon snow. Panic rippled. Sellsword stumbled back, some dropping spears. Jon rode forth, armored black, Longclaw shining. Enough blood, he commanded. Yield. Benaro opened his mouth. Then arrow from unseen crossbow thunked into his horse's neck. The beast screamed, fell. Benaro rolled clear, stunned. Chaos erupted. Half the company shouted ambush, others broke. Jon spurred forward, blade paring through two attackers. Wolf spears surged, shields locking. Sansa stayed mounted, voice rising. Spare those who lay arms. Arrows skimmed. Snow churned red. It ended swift. Sellswords, leaderless, scattered. Many dropped gear, fleeing for river barges. Some knelt, hands raised. Jon's guards secured them. Benaro, bleeding from thigh cut, glared hate but defeat dimmed it. Sansa dismounted, skirt brushing snow, approached him. You may keep your life, she said, for I value peace more than vengeance. Swear never again to raise blade in Westeros, and Bravos ships your men home. He spat blood. You play queen over all. I play protector over those you threaten, she answered. Dues. He bowed head, pride shredded. Words rasped. I yield. Relief rippled through ranks. Ghost padded to her side, tail swishing snow. Jon approached, eyes soft with pride. They clasped forearms. Later, as prisoners were tallied and fires quenched, they walked the shore of the God's Eye. Winter stars pricked overhead, mirrored on black water. In the distance, the Isle of Faces loomed, a smear of deeper dark where willows veiled secrets. John pointed. Bran once told me the green men guard that place. I wonder what they think of our empire. Sansa traced circles in frost with boot. Empires rise and fall. But perhaps they see something older in us. Root and branch uniting. John took her gloved hand. Then we plant seeds, not towers. They stood. The hush of lake between them and legend. Spring thaw came uncertain. Ice creaking, then refreezing. But word of the Golden Company's broken contract spread like new melt. Sel's words could be turned. Dragons and wolves commanded gods and banks. King Gendry disavowed clandestine support, sending envoy to treat trade. The Reach's regent Lady Fossaway requested counsel at Winterfell, citing admiration for your measured strength. The Lyseni captain wrote ballads praising northern cunning, translated poorly but sung in taverns from the Arbor to Bravos Tide. In White Harbor, the first Braavosi-funded dredge bit earth for the canal. At Winterfell, children chased juvenile dragons, now named Dawnflame and Mistwing, under careful handler eyes. Sansa staged monthly forums where free folk wives debated with Karstark matrons about seed rations. Laughter followed more than scorn. Jon oversaw forging of the Ice Iron Guard, a mixed order sworn to uphold Empire laws at roads and ports. Their marriage shifted too, from first flush into steady burn. Nights after council, they might argue over tax grain. Yet morning found them at Godswood, fingers entwined. When quarrels rose, they recalled charred hut near God's Eye, or barley wind across rampart, and harmony returned. One such evening, perched on bed's edge reading Master Wolkan's latest report on wall crack stabilization, Sansa looked up to find Jon watching her. Quiet intensity. "What?" she asked. He set scroll aside, brushing stray hair behind her ear. "I wonder how the songs will tell it. Will they know we argued about fish quotas?" She laughed, leaning into his hand. "Songs spare tedium. Let them. But I don't want them to forget the small parts," he said. "The moments when empire meant convincing one stubborn fisherman to move his net aside for canal dredge." She kissed his palm. "Then we'll keep our own record." He considered, then rose, fetched a fresh journal from shelf. On first page he wrote, "In the third year after the long night, the North sowed barley across trampled fields, and asked dragons to guard the winter sky. We built not a throne of swords, but a hearth of iron and ice, warmed by the stubborn fire of two hearts. May those who come later read these plain words and know that power tempered by love can outlast even frozen stone." He handed the quill to her. She set her signature beneath, adding, "And may they understand that every justice won was purchased by grief we chose to bear so others need not. If they sing, let them sing the quiet hours." They kissed, ink drying, candle flickering soft glow across parchment. A testament less grand than Valyrian steel, but perhaps stronger for its fragility. Beyond walls, seasons advancing, new storms still brewed. Whispers of slaver resurgence in new Kais. A plague creeping along the summer road. Ironborn descent at Pike, where some scorned Yara's alliance. But the Empire had learned to greet storms with lantern ready, rope tight, hearts unyielding. One crisp morning Sansa climbed Winterfell's tower as sun washed ramparts gold. Far fields brushed greening tips through thawed crust. She closed her eyes, inhaling scent of turned soil and distant hearthwood. Footsteps rose. Jon joined her, mugs of birch tea steaming. "Maester Wolkan wants a name for our currency," he said, leaning on parapet. She sipped tea. "Leaf wolves? Bankers will laugh." He grinned. "Then call them empires. Lend a farmer 10 empires, you trust hell grow them." "Then?" Jon considered. "Empires small enough to fit a purse, yet carrying weight." He set mug down, drew from pocket a prototype coin. Copper minted with direwolf leaf, other side dragon sickle. He pressed it into her hand. "First minted empire, for the queen who built them." She turned it in fingers, sunlight catching copper glint. "For the king who believed." They stood, shoulder to shoulder, gazing over land that stretched white and green, patched by river silver, stitched with new roads. In distant sky, a speck of black wing signaled Drogon's patrol. Nearer, a pair of juvenile dragons chased crows. On rampart below, a free folk boy offered apple slices to manderly girl, while Ghost watched, tolerant guardian. In that tableau Sansa saw the future. Not perfect, but possible. Fear would come. Faceless hands might reach. Storms rage. Coins tarnish. Yet the roots now sank deeper than dread, twining wolf and leaf, iron and ice, love and dragonfire forged into shape no sword could cleave. She closed fingers around the coin, feeling its edge bite faint against her palm. A reminder that even empires small enough to slip into a purse could bear the promise of worlds reshaped. She turned to Jon, expression steady, and saw mirrored resolve in his gray-green eyes. Together they breathed in dawn. And somewhere behind clouds the old gods, or perhaps only the wind, murmured through pine. Grow. K. The first warmth of true spring spread like a gentle tide across the empire of ice and iron, loosening the last brittle fingers of snow along the ridges of the broken branch hills, and coaxing clusters of crocus violet to spear through the thatch beneath Winterfell's new orchard rose. 47 days had passed since Jon Snow and Sansa Stark watched dawn flower over their restless realm from the eastern parapet. 47 days in which ravens carried tales of broken sellswards, trudging down the King's Road in ragged columns. Of Brevosi surveyors laying silvered chains across the neck to triangulate the exact cut of the half-finished canal. Of juvenile dragons shedding their first... The air itself felt threaded with possibility. Heady, fragile, startling as first love, and yet every breeze from the south carried rumor of rot beneath the bloom. A plague seed, whispered caravan riders. A summer cough that blackened tongues and left grocers toting their profits in graves. Maester Walken's letters from Old Town confirmed the fear. A flux of fever gnawing its way up the Roserad, swift as wildfire when it found crowded inns. The Citadel named it the Ash Tongue, for the way each victim's mouth darkened in final hours. 2,000 dead from Bitterbridge to Highgarden, Walken wrote, sealed beneath lime. The Reach's regent begged aid from Winterfell, a plea that arrived the same morning. 6 barrels of Taroshi spice struck Bear Island dock, labeled tribute for last moon's rescue of Stormlander farmers. Jon sat beside Sansa in the council chamber, reading the regent's trembled script, while summer sun slanted across his steel and iron sigil chair. We can spare dried root and barley, Wyman manderly rumbled, jowls aquiver with passion. But healers are scarcer than dragon eggs. Old Town swallowed every free apothecarist months back. Nand. Lyanna Mormont, perched on the table edge, swung boots that still did not reach floor. If these southern lords balk at our council one day and weep at our gate the next, let them feel the weight of their own pride. Sansa closed her eyes a moment, picturing rows of cots and children coughing black blood. Pride does not bury the dead. She said softly, we answer, or we become Southron in all the ways we once despised. She studied the gathered faces, Barbary Dustin's narrowed gaze, Yara Greyjoy's eager grin half hidden behind a pewter cup of spiced ale, Mira Reed coiling a quill between slender fingers. I will ride, she said, voice clear. A queen's envoy will speed relief and bind allegiance stronger than any tax bargain. Jon's protest rose, caught behind his teeth. Sansa felt it as surely as the heat of the hearth. She turned toward him, eyes gentled. This is the hearth we chose, my love. Warmth travels far, but someone must carry the first spark. Then no, he released the breath. Then we carry it together. Barbary straightened. Abandon the north just as ironborn dissent simmers and faceless rumors linger? Madness. Yara barked a laugh. Madness? No, that's sailing a longship into the smoking sea. This is simple risk. She slammed her cup down. I'll escort them. Any snake on the Roserad thinks to filch a queen, he'll meet a kraken's gutting blade. Her grin widened. Besides, my shipwrights are lazy. A month away will scare them swift. Sansa nodded gratitude, but turned to Lyanna. Winterfell cannot stand vacant. The Bear Queen holds command while we ride. The girl's green eyes flashed, fierce delight warring with gravity. "The North remembers," she said, crossing a small fist over her heart. Plans flowered from urgency. 200 wolf spears and 20 unsullied volunteers. Grey Worm's own would march south with a train of North-crafted wagons, stocked with frost-dried root vegetables, honey mead infused with willow bark, casks of pure spring water from Snow's End caverns, reputed to soothe fevers. Mira Reed would carry pouches of powdered marsh violet, an herb the Crannog folk swore could quell gut aches. Davos. Davos finalizing canal tariffs would rendezvous at Maidenpool with Taroshi surgeons he had bribed with spice rights. The juvenile dragons, Dawnflame and Mistwing, remained at Winterfell under Lyanna's ward. 2 half-grown guardians, wings unclipped now yet still learning when. The larger defenders, Drogon, Rhaegal, and their mother queen, circled the planning like distant storms. Daenerys offered Drogon's shadow across the Roseruad once a fortnight, a spectacle to keep bandit lords from gorging on chaos. Preparations unfolded in the keep's lower courtyards. Coopers sealing water barrels, smiths sharpening spearheads with runnels of oil, seamstresses stitching red leaf patches onto gray and silver banners, symbolizing Mercy's hand. Jon walked line after line of supply crates, mind slicing each hinge and clasp for weakness. Sansa followed behind, comforting a child volunteer whose nerves rattled at dragon roars echoing over ridge. She placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, learned long ago that a queen may yield steel or bread, but should never withhold gentle touch. The girl straightened, courage rekindled. Memory of Arya's ragged grin flashed through Sansa's thoughts. Night before departure found them not in bed but in Winterfell's deepest crypt, lanterns revealing crumbling faces of kings carved from silent stone. They knelt together before Lord Eddard's effigy, palm to palm. Jon pressed a kiss to Sansa's knuckles beneath the gaze of ancestors. "I fear each road we stride," he confessed, voice barely above drip of melting ice. Sansa traced a chip on the statue's hilt. "Fear keeps us breathing. Guilt feeds grief. Fear feeds hope. Mending. You sound like Sam," he said with a crooked smile. She smiled back. "Books rub off." Her gaze flicked to Lyanna Stark's effigy and the promise braided inside her moonstone circlet. "We cannot let ghosts hold us, Jon. The realm is alive." They rose, blowing out lanterns, leaving the crypt to its stillness. 2 weeks into their ride, the ash tongue greeted them like a viper hiding beneath bloom. The first afflicted man they met lay beneath an overturned wagon near King's Landing's burnt-out outer farms. Blackened tongue protruding, eyes sunken pools. A woman hunched beside him, stroking a rag along his cracked lips as though he might still sip water. When Jon dismounted and offered a canteen, whispering of demons hiding in coughs. Grey Worms Unsullied built a pyre at sunset, honoring the man with flame while Sansa guided the widow to their healer's tent. Powder of marsh violet eased her own rattling lungs, and by dawn she could speak a name. Harwin of Hayford, father, orchard keeper, lover of plum pies. Sansa etched the details in her ledger. Each name, a candle in memory's dark. As they pressed south, a grim parade lined the road. Wagons laden with corpses bound for lime pits, wooden boards nailed on indoors with chalked sigils warning fever within. Fields left fallow because farmers feared the river breeze. Yet hope followed in their wagon train, gray and red banners flapping, free folk drummers beating slow heart rhythms to comfort the ill. Yara seamen singing bawdy lullabies that somehow coaxed smiles from shoulders stooped under grief. Sansa learned to recite willow bark dosing, to fold reed leaves behind ears as Crannog folk did to clear lungs. She wore a simple surcoat of undyed linen rather than queenly velvet, hair braided like common riders. Still, small folk recognized her. Seed of Winterfell's legend had spread with sellsword rumors and dragon sightings. At a hamlet outside Golden Grove, a child pressed an acorn carved from bone into her palm, saying, "For the hearth that burns past snow, Sansa blinked back sudden tears and tied the talisman to her belt. In Highgarden, they found a fortress half-turned hospice. Petals of pink roses drifted from balconies where banners once boasted Tyrell Golden. Now the stone ladders bristled with cots. Lady Leonette Fossaway, regent, widow, scholar, met them in the peach orchard courtyard, her once silken gown stained with tincture blotches. She clasped Sansa's forearms fiercely. "I feared you would never come," she murmured, eyes rimmed red but sharp. "The Maesters say the flux began in the Summer Islands. Their ships anchored at Old Town, and from there the river of trade carried plague faster than ravens." Dandero. Sansa surveyed rows of cane-lean bodies beneath linen awnings, white tongues flecked black. "We'll slow that river," she replied. She signaled healers to open crates, casks of willow mead, bundles of silverleaf compress. Jon ordered Unsullied to erect quarantine tents on Moat Island, while wolf spears cleared rot from grain stores where rats nested. Yaris Krakens patrolled the Mander Delta, turning away smugglers whose holds teemed with contraband spice but lacked health writs. Day blended into feverish day. Sansa seldom slept more than an hour, meeting apothecaries, rewriting distribution lists, comforting Lady Leonette, whose nephew succumbed in his 12th summer. She insisted on witnessing each burial, burning juniper to mask stench. Jon worked among stables, repurposed as infirmary, hauling water buckets, holding men's arms as Rennick the Surger cut away dead tissue. When a thrashing knight nearly bit through his own tongue, Jon forced a spoon between teeth until convulsion eased. "I fought whites," he told the shaken squires. "This is no worse." But Sansa saw his eyes when night drifted. He carried each death like new link in unseen chain. On the 8th day, Grey Worm approached them in the orchard courtyard, saluting sharp. "Unsullied harbored a sick brother. I have isolated him, but the cough deepens." Sansa's heart lurched. She followed to the island tents where the soldier knelt, back straight despite tremors. His dark gaze met hers calmly. She knelt, placed gloved hand over his. "Your courage honored all of us in the snow." She whispered, "Rest easy now." She signaled the healer. Willow draught dripped between his lips. By dawn he breathed easier, and rumor of Unsullied resilience spread, coaxing farmers to accept aid. Grey Worm bowed low. "Mercy is stronger than fear," he said, voice rough. Yet plague still claimed dozens each day. Sansa's ledger thickened, ink smeared by rain and tears. Lady Leonette's voice cracked from reading funeral verses until Sansa took the notebook and read to herself, voice steady though her spine shook. Jon held her shoulders afterwards. "You carry them well," he murmured. She leaned into him, the orchard's fragrance bittersweet. In second fortnight, Davos finally arrived, Tiroshi surgeons in tow. They wore brass-beaked masks stuffed with saffron and cloves, yet their fingers proved deft, opening pustules to drain blackened blood, cleaning wounds. Combined with northern willow mead and crannog violet steam, the plague's speed slowed. New cases dropped from 50 a day to 12, then 8 died. The Citadel's tally clerks whispered of miracle. Sansa shook her head. No, merely stubborn hearts. When the final fever victim died, peacefully, the healers lit a pyre of cedar smelling oddly of applewood. Jon and Sansa stood hand in hand as flame licked dusk. Lady Leonette turned to them. "The Reach owes you spring," she said. She knelt. Others followed, knights bowing heads. Through smoky haze Sansa glimpsed her mother's ghost. A memory of Catelyn guiding charity caravans. She felt tears gather again but held them. "Rise," Jon said, voice roughened. "Your harvest repaid debt before we assumed it." Gratitude expressed itself in the realm of coin and oath. Highgarden pledged levy of 100 mounted healers for future crises, each to bear leaf and wolf badge. They also signed trade charter with Northern Canal, funneling grain north in exchange for pine tar and smoked trout. a pack sealed with golden peach wine under moonlight amid fragrant blooms. Lady Leonette, refilling cups, whispered to Sansa. "Marrow drives blade, not hilt. You remember that." Sansa squeezed the older woman's hand. The Queen's convoy departed Highgarden, riding a wave of relief that smelled of turned soil and cider fermentation. But no path home proved so simple. As they neared Blackwater Rush, a column of refugees blocked road, tearing at each other for scarce pine planks. Rumor of a cracked bridge forced them to cross near Kingswood. Jon scouted ahead with 2 wolf spears. When they did not return by dusk, Sansa's dread coiled. Grey Worm organized searchlines fanning the forest edge. Yara scowled at rustling brush. If Lannister partisans took him, I'll string their gold guts. Her twin blades glinted. An arrow whistled overhead, thudding wagon side. The shaft bore green ribbon tied near fletching, a sign from Jon indicating safe vantage. A voice called, well practiced in Night's Watch signals, guiding them to a glade where Jon crouched beside a corpse propped against elm. Pale, stiff, half-masked in chalk dust. Around its neck hung a coin imprinted with faceless hood. A second arrow pointed north, deeper gloom. Sansa's breath hitched. He stumbled from brush. Jon explained as they ringed the body. Too weak to attack. Poison in his veins, Maester's tea by smell. He turned the corpse's palm. A rune scorched the skin. Three-eyed crow. Mira Reed knelt, eyes wide. A Greenseer's sigil, but warped. Someone twisted the old tongue. Grey Worm frowned. Curse? Mark? Sansa tasted copper on her tongue. Old tales of the Night King's servants, marks blazing on forearms. A warning, perhaps, or message. They scoured glade. Footprints. 3 men. One walked bare, one wore soft leather, third heavy boot. A fragment of parchment wedged under root bore single Valyrian glyph for C. Sansa rolled it between gloved fingers. Faceless men. Yara asked. No, Mira answered. If the House of Black and White struck, we would find no token at all. She tugged arrow, sniffed shaft. Cedar pitch. Skagos wood. A thread of dread spooled. Someone inside Empire experimenting with forgotten magics. They buried the corpse beneath cairn of stone and pine. Sansa said a prayer to both old gods and strangers. That dusk, they camped in hollow near stream. Jon traced map by firelight. If foes intend illusions of tree magic, Bran may know. Sansa agreed. A raven soared next morning bearing message to the wall. Where Brandon Stark served as wandering oracle, seldom anchored but always listening. The bird returned within hours. Feathers damp, note short. Danger sprouts from seat of faces. Meet on isle when moon bleeds. Jon exhaled, reading aloud. Sansa's pulse thrummed. The Isle of Faces, haunted refuge in God's eye, circled by legends older than recorded time. She remembered standing on its shore months before, feeling hush. Bran calling them now meant threat deeper than Selzord rebellion. They weighed counsel long. Jon argued for immediate sail across God's eye. Sansa feared leaving convoy of healers unprotected. Davos proposed dividing forces. He would escort wagons to Maidenpool, Yaris Krakens ferry them north, while Jon and Sansa row to Isle with Grey Worm and Mira. Decision sealed, they rowed east to Riverport Duskendale, where a weathered skiff awaited. Night sky tinted copper as they launched onto still waters of God's eye, mist curling low. Each oar stroke rippled moon's reflection. Mira steered. Grey Worm stood sentinel at prow. Jon and Sansa sat midships, hands entwined. Frogs croaked, broken by distant owl. The isle's silhouette rose, gnarled weirwoods draping roots like skeletal hands. Lantern glow flickered among trunks. Bran stood upon mossy shore, not alone. Beside him a figure cloaked in vine-woven robe, face hidden beneath staghorn helm. 2 more green men flanked, antlers smaller, staves held upright. Bran raised a branch of blossomed heart tree. His eyes glimmered milky white, though pupils shifted as they approached. "Sister," he greeted, voice deeper than years parted. "Brother." Sansa leapt onto shore, hugging him. His thin arms returned pressure. Jon clasped Bran's shoulder. The antlered guardian spoke in voice like wind through reeds. "Forest remembers broken seals. You realign stone and flesh, yet roots shift restless." Mira bowed. Grey Worm eyed them warily. Bran gestured for them to follow twisting path into Weirwood Grotto. Blood-red leaves carpeted ground. Scent of sap, sharp. Gaudy jowl. Inside clearing stood ancient heart tree, whose trunk curled into open maw. At its base, swirling pool mirrored sky, though canopy hid stars. Bran's chair stationed near. He began. "When you bound wolf and dragon, tremors of new order shook river of time. Many rejoice. Some hunger for fracture. The faceless do not broker. They correct imbalance when called. A faceless master has petitioned old forces, twisting memories flow." He placed a pale hand on the trunk, eyes fluttering. "They conjure illusions of greenseer craft to sow doubt, using iron of coin and ash of fear." Sansa pictured corpses rune. "Why target us? Empires disrupt price of death." Bran answered. "If one realm unites, wars wane, markets shift. Some thrive on endless blade." His gaze fixed on Sansa. "You stand at crossroad. Continue with harvest of peace, or bend knee to pattern of conflict." Jon's jaw clenched. "We will not bend." Bran inclined head toward Greenman leader. Willow voice offers aid. The antlered figure stepped forward, pressing a pouch of seeds into Sansa's palm. "Plant in river mud near each new road," Willow voice instructed. "Roots will taste any blood magic long before man." Listen to their color. Confusion flicked over Jon's face. Willow voice pointed at Sansa's belt where bone acorn hung. "She already hears." Sansa felt warmth from acorn. "How?" "Your heart leans toward hearth," said Bran. "It beats in rhythm with worldroot." Night deepened. Willow voice produced carved horn, etchings swirling. "Blow only when final winter blackens leaf." He bowed and retreated into thicket. Bran's strength waned. Jon knelt, worried. But Bran smiled faintly. "My part is watcher's dance. Yours is builder's song." He squeezed Sansa's hand. "Trust river." They parted with dawn fog curling pale. Crossing still water, Sansa studied seeds in cloth, tiny silver kernels shaped like tears. Mira murmured old Crannog rhyme about silverweed. "Silver tears catch liar's breath." Sansa tucked them into satchel. Return ride north felt longer, though roads cleared. At Maidenpool they reunited with Davos and Yara. Convoy safe, bound for sea. Jon and Sansa boarded Yara's flagship Sea Viper. Sails unfurled to catch brisk wind. Journey up coast quiet. Too quiet. On third night, watchmen spotted distant torch flickers on horizon. A fleet, hulls long and narrow as eels, sails dyed midnight. Ironborn rebels. Yara cursed, spitting over railing. "My dear uncle's spawn." She prepared to engage, but Sea Viper, laden with healers and new seeds, risked capture. Sansa proposed diversion. Wolf spears an unsullied row in small boats south, lighting driftwood stalks to mimic campfires along shore. Rebels would chase. Meanwhile, Sea Viper hugged fog-shrouded coast. Sails furled, oars muffled. Plan accepted. Under moonless sky, Sansa kissed Jon's cheek before he boarded rowboat. They split again, each carrying half-empire's hope. Fog cloaked Sea Viper like ghost's shawl. Sansa stood at bow, cloak snapping. Yara's helmsman steered by feel. Hours of tension before dawn rose, revealing empty sea behind. Diversion worked. Relief, but new dread. Where were Jon's boats? That evening Raven landed on mast. Note from Mira. Safe. Rebels routed by shoal rocks. Retreat. Jon marching overland along Torrhen's Wine Road, 2 days behind. Sansa exhaled. They docked at White Harbor to thunderous cheers. port banners draped in sheaves of dried lavender and barley. Manderley rolled down gangway, beaming. Harvest, feast, awaits. Still, Sansa's gaze scanned horizon until Yon's column appeared. Wolf banners cresting hill, him astride muddy chestnut. She ran, meeting him at gates. He dismounted, swept her up, laughter mixing with exhaustion. "You outran krakens," she teased. "Only because they smelled worse," he replied. Feast commenced at dusk under lanterns, strung between mast poles. Bards plucked lutes. Free folk drummed. Healers swapped stories with Manderley cooks. Tiroshi surgeons danced clumsily with Risewell girls. Sansa, seated beside Jon, allowed herself moment of pure belonging. Yet before final course, a messenger burst breathless through crowd. Rider from Moat Cailin. The wall had cracked again, a rift wide enough for 2 men abreast. Ice melting unnatural fast. Wildling scouts sighted shadows moving in white hush. Not whites, but something older, green-eyed, skin like bark. The postscript. Dawnflame and Mistwing took wing north unbidden, as though called. Silence fell over banquet. Jon stood, candlelight casting wolfish shadow behind. "We ride at dawn." Sansa rose beside him. "Together," she echoed. Guests murmured dread yet trust. They dispersed, prepping. In quiet after, Sansa visited harbor dock, moon reflecting on still water. She pulled silver seeds from pouch, scattered 3 into tide. Ripples glowed faint, then faded. She touched bone acorn, warmth pulsed. Jon joined, slipping arm around. "I fear endless storms," he admitted. She leaned against him. "We built a hearth that moves. Storms may come, but we carry fire forward." He pressed forehead to hers, breath mingling with sea salt. Stars shimmered overhead, mirrored below, as if 2 skies cradled them. Snow returned by the time they reached last hearth. Not winter's kill, but early premonition. Dawnflame and Mistwing streaked above fortress at first light, screeching, wings shedding ice crystals. Lyanna Mormont met convoy. Base pale. The walls wound widens. Bran's ravens say old magics unravel. Something inside. They pressed north to Castle Black, discovering garrison half deserted. Rangers evacuated civilians south. The gap yawned like mouth of fallen giant. Ice melted, forming pool reflecting aurora green. Dawnflame circled, roared. Mistwing dove into rift, emerged with shards glimmering blue. Jon, Sansa, Lyanna, Grey Worm, Mira, and Willow Voice arrived by hidden ways. Stood at breach. Willow Voice knelt, pressing palm. "Stone spirits scream," he said. Mira scattered handful of silver seeds into watery crack. They sank, dissolving. Frost patterns rippled, forming runes Sansa could half read. Blood undone. Fire mends. Bran's vision earlier, danger brushes root, resonated. Fire. Dragons. But not mere flame, heart fire. Sansa stepped to pool edge, produced acorn charm. She sliced thumb, blood drop falling into icy water. The silver seeds there glowed, threads weaving toward shard. Dawnflame landed, lowering head, exhaling warm breath. The water steamed, runes shifted, not tied. Crack shivered, edges knitting like frost forming in reverse. Mistwing joined, roaring. Slowly gap narrowed. Ice fused, glowing faint green. Wood-like figures in distance retreated. When last seemed sealed, Dawnflame collapsed, exhausted. Sansa stroked neck. Lyanna exhaled fogged air. "We mended wall with blood and dragon breath. Songs will call it sorcery." Jon clasped Sansa's shoulders. "Songs will call it love and cold." Months later, scholars would debate mechanism. Catalytic iron in Wolf Queen's royal blood, dragon heat triggering crystallization, seeds acting as conduit for weirwood sap. But those present spoke of moment when old wall breathed and healed, because woman from Winterfell chose hope over dread. Spring turned fully to summer, second year of empire. The canal opened amid carved arches, where Merlin towers, boar leaf, and wolf emblems. Braavosi ships glided, paying toll in empires. Coins now minted of copper, silver, and rare electrum mixture. Ashton lingered only in memory, high garden orchards heavy with fruit. When shoreline thrived, ironborn rebels quiet after Yara's assumption of Pike's salt throne. Faceless rumors faded. Some whispered the house of black and white called debt, settled after pacifying plague in bridging Green's ear illusions. Willow voice vanished into wolfswood, though green leaves sprouted along canal banks in pattern of silent guardianship. One golden afternoon Sansa led small tour along canal path, a delegation from Dorne exploring trade. Children ran ahead, chasing butterflies across reeds grown silver-tipped. She paused at mile marker where she'd planted first silver seed. Tiny saplings stood, bark pale, leaves shimmering between green and white, edges tinged rosy like dawn. She knelt, touched trunk. Warmth throbbed. Behind her Jon approached, wearing simple tunic dusted from road. He slipped empire coin into her palm. A new gold piece bearing her profile on one side, his on reverse, edges etched with motto, "Flame and frost, one hearth." She raised brow. "Vanity? Memory," he said. "Coin travels where we may not, carrying story." She considered coin weight solid. May it never buy blood. Not if hearts remember price we paid. They walked, hands brushing. Ahead, canal gleamed like ribbon of molten glass. Overhead, dragons soared, full-grown regal casting green shimmer, dawn flame and mist-wing trailing, embers glinting tails. Children's laughter rose as shadows swept the path. No longer fear but fascination. At day's end, they returned to Winterfell. Ramparts, now ringed with flowering vines from silverweed seeds. Feast prepared for Dornish guests. Sansa changed into gown of pale green moonstone circlet gleaming. Jon wore doublet embroidered with single acorn motif. In hall, torches flickered, filling vaulted rafts with warm roar. He took her hand before entrance. "Do you miss quiet?" She smiled. "Quiet lives here." She tapped his chest. "And here." She touched her own heart. "It follows even into storm." They stepped forward, crowd cheering. Music swelled. Blend of free folk drums, reach harp, Dornish flute. As they moved to dais, Sansa glimpsed crypt stone through archway. Ghost of their fathers seemed to nod. She blinked, tears bright. When horn blown to mark seating faded, Jon raised goblet. "To seeds that grow where swords once clashed. To hearths that move with us," Sansa added. Hall echoed toast. Cups clinked, mead flowed. In that moment, empire of ice and iron breathed as one great living oak. Roots delving deep into past, branches stretching across rivers and walls, leaves shaking with laughter of children, unafraid. Storms would come, their tale far from done. But this chapter, carved in copper and song, ended with trembling promise fulfilled, that love harnessed duty can weld realms, mend walls and coax green from frozen desolation. And across the sea, in Braavos, a faceless man folded away mask of kindly old merchant. Pausing to glance at coin etched with wolf leaf sword, he tucked it into purse, whispering, "Balance." Then he vanished into crowd, leaving only faint fragrance of winter rose.